Chapter 1776. At the same time, the mysterious lady, Yi Shu, the hook-nosed old man, and the monkey-faced old man were also suspicious of the snow python.
Ancestors, where's my father?
Also, why are you with them?
Young Master Hao suddenly ran in front of the hook-nosed old man and the monkey-faced old man and asked.
Shut up! The hook-nosed old man and the monkey-faced old man glared at him. Can't you see that the current situation is not right? Why are you still asking questions? Young Master Hao's body stiffened. What's going on? Why are the two ancestors' attitudes towards me different from before? Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his heart. Senior, I really have an urgent matter.
No matter how urgent it is, you have to come with me first,
the snow python said. Its tone was as if it was ordering Qin Feiyong, and it couldn't be disobeyed. Old Qin said, Feiyong, what should we do? Qin Feiyong's eyes flickered as he looked at the snow python and smiled. How about this? I'll go with you and let old Qin and the others return to the great Qin Empire first. The snow python shook its head. No, they also want to go to the glacier forest with me. What? Qin Feiyong was instantly enraged. What is this beast trying to do? The mysterious lady raised her eyebrows. Yi Shu, the hook-nosed old man, and the monkey-faced old man also frowned. Just as Qin Feiyong and the snow python were in a stalemate, the people of the great Qin Empire had mostly returned. Only a dozen people were left. And among these people, there was an old man that Qin Feiyong was familiar with. This person was the manager of the Precious Treasure Pavilion, Sun Dahai. Qin Feiyong, the situation of the great Qin Empire has changed. The commander of the Kirin army has betrayed us. Marquis Xiao has been killed. Zhuge Shunfeng has broken out of the seal. Your disciples Wang Xiaojia, Ren Wushuang, Yan Nanshan, and Old Man Ren have also been captured by Zhuge Shunfeng. Hurry back. When Sun Dahai passed by Qin Feiyong, he secretly transmitted his voice to him. What? Qin Feiyong's gaze trembled as he hurriedly raised his head to look at Sun Dahai. However, Sun Dahai had already followed the crowd into the gate of space-time. Is this true? How could the commander of the Kirin army betray them? Old Man Qin, Zhao Tai Lai, Tang Hai, Golden Panther, even if you have to die, you must hold back the snow python for me. Qin Feiyong suddenly let out a roar as he unleashed the attainment formula. He leaped over the snow python and rushed toward the space-time gate. What's the situation? Old Qin, Old Man Qin, and the Golden Divine Leopard were stunned. The mysterious Madam, Yi Shu, the hook-nosed old man, and the monkey-faced old man also looked at Qin Feiyong in surprise. How dare you? The snow python did not expect that Qin Feiyong would disobey her order. What was even more unexpected was that Qin Feiyong's speed was so fast. Following her low shout, the space-time door closed with a loud bang. The space-time door had already recognized her as its master. She could close it with just a thought. No matter how fast Qin Feiyong was, he would not be able to catch up with her. Looking at the space-time door that closed, Qin Feiyong's anger suddenly became uncontrollable. Whoosh! He turned his head and stared at the snow python. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes as he said, What do you mean by this? I just asked you to come with me. Why are you so stubborn? Do you know? The price of angering me is very heavy. The snow python said.
Qin Feiyong said coldly, The price of angering me is not small either.
Is that so? The snow python smiled coldly. Boom! Old Man Qin, Tang Hai, Zhao Tai Lai, and the Golden Panther looked at each other. Their auras suddenly exploded as they charged toward the snow python. A bunch of ants. How dare you be so presumptuous? The snow python's expression was full of contempt as her divine power surged out. Ah! Old Man Qin, Tang Hai, and the Golden Panther were instantly crippled. They crashed into the square below like meteorites. So strong? Qin Feiyong's heart was in turmoil. The mysterious lady and Yi Shu were also dumbfounded. 3 gods of war and a divine beast were instantly crippled? You forced me to make a move. The snow python snorted and looked at Qin Feiyong. Actually, you don't have to do this. I mean you no harm. What I want to tell you is about Qin Yuan.
Uncle Yuan.
Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. The snow python's divine power surged and the space-time door opened again. And it easily revived the space-time door. After the space-time door opened, the snow python retreated to the side and looked at Qin Feiyong. Don't force me to make a move. Let's go. Qin Feiyong clenched his hands and swooped down, sending Old Man Qin, Tang Hai, and the Golden Panther to the Black Tortoise world. Then, he soared into the sky, looked at the snow python deeply, and entered the space-time door. The snow python looked at the mysterious lady and Yi Shu. The four of you come with me. We're going too. The four of them raised their eyebrows. Yes. The snow python nodded. The four of them looked at each other and had no choice but to enter the space-time door. The snow python also rushed into the space-time door. Boom. Soon, the space-time door disappeared in the void. What's going on? Everyone looked at each other. The clouds are rising and the sun is sinking. A storm is coming.
This is the omen of a great calamity.
Pei Yi walked to Li He's side and sighed. Li He turned to look at Pei Yi and said, "Do you know something?" "I don't know.
But I have a hunch that a great calamity is coming.
When the time comes, people will be plunged into misery and suffering." Pei Yi said.
Great calamity, Li He murmured.
Above the glacier forest, Qin Feiyong and the others appeared one after another. The snow python put away the space-time door and glanced at Qin Feiyong and the others. Finally, its gaze fell on Qin Feiyong and said with a faint smile, "Kid, do you think you can fool everyone by hiding your cultivation?" Qin Feiyong's heart skipped a beat. "I remember when you entered the divine sight. You were just a small combat emperor. I didn't expect you to be a combat immortal now. Seems like you've gained a lot in the divine sight," the snow python said. Qin Feiyong was shocked. It could see through his hidden cultivation at a glance. How strong was this snow python? "You must be thinking about my cultivation right now."
"I might as well tell you the truth.
My cultivation is a half-step divine lord. 4 combat immortals like you who have just become combat immortals, I only need to move my fingers to get rid of you," the snow python said in disdain. "Half-step divine lord?"
Qin Feiyong and the others looked at each other with suspicion.
"After going to the divine sight, I believe you already know that combat immortals are not the end," the snow python said. Qin Feiyong and the others nodded. Divine Lord is above combat immortals. Combat immortals are divided into 5 stages. Initial, phenomenal, perfected, and perfected. Above combat immortals is Divine Lord. But between perfected combat immortals and Divine Lords, there is another stage, which is the half-step Divine Lord. In short, those who have surpassed perfected combat immortals but have yet to become Divine Lords are half-step Divine Lords, the snow python said. In other words, you're only half a step away from becoming a real Divine Lord?
Qin Feiyong frowned and said,
"Yes."
"Now tell me, facing a half-step Divine Lord, is there any use in resisting?"
the snow python joked. Qin Feiyong and the others looked at each other. They didn't expect the snow python to be so strong. Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice, "You said you wanted to tell me about Uncle Yuan. What is it?" "Qin Yuan is not as simple as you think." The snow python sighed. "Don't talk nonsense. I already know this," Qin Feiyong said. The snow python said, "How rude. Then do you know who Qin Yuan's master is?" "What?
Uncle Yuan has a master."
Qin Feiyong was shocked. "Yes.
His master is the demon ancestor,"
the snow python said. The demon ancestor. The eyes of the mysterious lady and Yi Shu trembled. How was this possible? How could Qin Yuan be the demon ancestor's man? Qin Feiyong also trembled when he heard this. He said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense and slander Uncle Yuan. You're not surprised at all when you hear the name demon ancestor. It seems that you know the demon ancestor very well."
"Well, I don't have to explain."
The snow python smiled. It looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Your ancestor Qin Batian sealed the demon ancestor's divine body in the god's relic. Only those who possess the purple gold dragon blood, the purple gold dragon soul, and the dragon's energy can undo the seal."
"You know all this?"
Yi Shu was shocked. "It's not a big deal. Is it strange that I know?" the snow python asked. Yi Shu was silent.
Qin Feiyong looked at the snow python and said, "Go on."
Although the demon ancestor's divine body was sealed, his remnant soul escaped. In order to unlock the seal and take back the divine body, the demon ancestor arranged for Qin Yuan to get close to you and train you. He wanted you to grow up quickly so that you could enter the divine relic and help unlock the seal. The snow python said. Is that so? Qin Feiyong murmured and shook his head. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Uncle Yuan is not such a person. Actually, I can understand how you feel now. After all, Qin Yuan has been taking care of you since you were young. You see him as family. But, this is the truth. You have to accept it even if you don't want to. The snow python shouted. No. It's not like that. You must be lying to me. You're trying to sow discord between me and Uncle Yuan. Tell me, what are your intentions? Qin Feiyong roared. Sigh. The snow python sighed deeply and said, I have no enmity with you. Do I need to sow discord between you? Impossible. Qin Feiyong shook his head frantically. Feiyong, calm down. The mysterious lady quickly comforted and looked at the snow python. Since you even know Qin Yuan's identity, then you should also know why his father crippled his cultivation and expelled him from the imperial capital. I know. But there are some things that he needs to find the answer for himself. The snow python said lightly. The mysterious lady said angrily. Let him find the answer for himself. Don't you think this is ridiculous? That's right. You told him about Qin Yuan, but you didn't tell him why his father crippled him. How do you expect us to believe you? Yi Shu snorted coldly. Believe it or not, in short. Speaking of which, the snow python suddenly raised its eyebrows. The next moment, it disappeared without a trace. The mysterious lady, Yi Shu, and the other two scanned their surroundings in bewilderment. What's going on? Why would he suddenly disappear without any reason? After coming back to their senses, the four of them released their divine sense and spread it in all directions. But after searching the entire glacier forest, they didn't find any trace of the snow python, nor did they find anything like a spatial divine object. Genius remembered the address of this site in 1 second. Apex mobile version reading website. Chapter 1777. In the sky above a vast mountain. The snow python glanced around, its eyes rather hazy. The grudge between you and me should be settled by you and me. Why do you have to involve the younger generation? Suddenly, a faintly discernible voice reverberated through the void. A white-haired old man appeared in front of the snow python out of thin air. His white clothes fluttered, his white hair fluttered, and his whole body exuded an otherworldly temperament. He did not reveal the slightest bit of aura, just like an ordinary old man. But as he stood there, the surrounding void was constantly twisting, as if it could not bear his existence. If Qin Feiyong was here, he would definitely recognize him at a glance. It was Uncle Yuan. The snow python looked at Qin Yuan and snorted coldly. I knew it was you, old bastard. When did you come? Qin Yuan said lightly, when the miracle started this old man came. The snow python said, so you're saying that you heard everything I said to Qin Feiyong? Yes. Qin Yuan nodded. The snow python said angrily, then why didn't you stop me? There's no need. Because I know Feiyong will believe me. Qin Yuan shook his head. Is that so? I advise you not to have too much hope. The snow python sneered. Then let's wait and see. Qin Yuan waved his hand, and an image immediately appeared in the void in front of him. The image showed Qin Feiyong and the others. Qin Feiyong lowered his head, his eyes full of pain. He seemed to be struggling mentally. Should he believe the snow python's words? The mysterious Madame, Yi Shu, and the other two stood at the side, looking at him worriedly. After a long time, the mysterious lady sighed, walked to Qin Feiyong's side, and said, Feiyong, although I don't know what kind of person Qin Yuan is, you have to trust your own judgment and follow your heart. Qin Feiyong was still silent. Yi Shu glanced at Qin Feiyong, then looked at the mysterious lady and said, It seems that this matter has a big impact on him. This kind of thing, if it was anyone else, they would find it hard to accept. The mysterious lady said faintly, Above the mountains and rivers. The snow python sneered. Old man, did you see that? If he really believed you, why would he hesitate for so long? Let's wait and see. Qin Yuan chuckled. As soon as Qin Feiyong finished speaking, He suddenly lifted his head and scanned the surrounding void. The pain and struggle in his eyes were completely gone. Feiyong Yu, the mysterious Madam, Yi Shu, and the other two stared at Qin Feiyong in astonishment. Qin Feiyong said, "It hasn't appeared yet. This snow python must have encountered some difficulties." The mysterious Madam said, "Let's not talk about this first. Just now I was just pretending. Actually, I didn't believe her at all." Qin Feiyong sneered. "Faking it?" The four of them looked at each other. "That's right. Even if Uncle Yuan is one of the demon ancestors' people, she didn't have to bring us to the glacier forest. She could have just said it in the central divine kingdom. If I'm not wrong, she should be buying time for Mu Tianyang and Zhuge Mingyang." Qin Feiyong snorted coldly. "Buying time? You mean that she's in cahoots with Mu Tianyang and the others?" The mysterious madam was surprised. "I'm not sure about that. Maybe she has nothing to do with Mu Tianyang and the others. She just wants to achieve her own goal, so she helped them. But what I'm sure of is that there must be some kind of grudge between her and Uncle Yuan. She wants to use me to make me and Uncle Yuan kill each other." Qin Feiyong pondered. Above the mountains and rivers. Damn it, damn it. When the snow python heard Qin Feiyong's words, it was furious. Its eyes were full of anger. Qin Yuan retracted his gaze and looked at the snow python. "Now you understand. Feiyong isn't that easy to be used by you." "Then I'll kill him," the snow python said angrily. "With me here, you won't have a chance. I believe you also know that if the two of us fight, it will only end in a lose-lose situation. How about this? You stay here with me and watch them quietly. Besides, you've already bought enough time for Mu Tianyang and the demon ancestor to escape. It's time to stop." Qin Yuan smiled. The snow python said disdainfully, "They're just two pieces of trash. If it wasn't for their value, why would I help them?" "I don't care if you help them, but you can't do it," Qin Yuan said. The snow python stared at Qin Yuan and asked, "What about you? If Qin Feiyong is defeated by Mu Tianyang and the demon ancestor, won't you interfere?" "Of course. This has been the rule since ancient times. As guardians, we're not allowed to intervene in worldly affairs." Qin Yuan nodded. "Guardians. Humph. Although we're called guardians, we're actually dogs guarding this continent. I'm not convinced. Look at the guardians of the miracle. They can control rule force, but what about us? We have nothing. If it's possible, I don't want to be a bullshit guardian." The snow python said angrily. "It's already destined. What's the use of complaining? Besides, no one forced you. You're the one who wanted to do it." Qin Yuan said. "That's why I regret it. Forget it. Let's not talk about these things." "All right. I'll do as you wish and not interfere. I'd like to see exactly how capable Qin Feiyong, whom you've personally nurtured, is." The snow python snorted. "That's good." Qin Yuan's face immediately revealed a smile. "Glacier Forest?" Qin Feiyong asked. "Great-grandmother, do you know the snow python's background?" "I don't know. I only know that she already existed when I was born. Furthermore, even my father and the first head pagoda master were extremely afraid of her." The mysterious lady shook her head. Qin Feiyong said, "No wonder her cultivation is so terrifying. She's an old monster." Yi Shu said, "Feiyong, let's not worry about the snow python for now. Hurry and find Mu Tianyang." Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice, "No, I have to return to the imperial capital now." "Return to the imperial capital now?" Yi Shu was doubtful. "Feiyong, isn't our plan to take them down one by one? Now that we're in the Forgotten Continent, we should first take care of Mu Tianyang, then go to the imperial capital together and take care of Zhuge Mingyang and the others." The hook-nosed old man and the monkey-faced old man said. "The situation in the imperial capital is on the right. Sun Dahai told me that the commander of the Kirin army betrayed them. Zhuge Shinfeng escaped and many people were captured. I have to go back and investigate." Qin Feiyong said. "The commander of the Kirin army betrayed them? How is this possible? I've also heard of this person. Isn't his relationship with you very good?" The mysterious lady was surprised. "I don't want to believe it, but Sun Dahai is the steward of the general pavilion. There's no need to lie to me. Anyway, I'll go back now. You guys go to the Mu family and see the situation. Qin Feiyong said. Okay.
The four nodded.
Wait. Did you see Tan Wu, Dong Zhengyang, and the Cerberus just now? Qin Feiyong suddenly said. Ha!
The mysterious lady was stunned and shook her head. Just now in the Central Divine Kingdom, I've been paying attention to you and the snow python.
I didn't pay attention to them. I noticed them. When the snow python appeared, they split up and left. The monkey-faced old man said. Left. Qin Feiyong frowned. Little cousin, don't worry about them. Go back. Lu Zheng's anxious voice suddenly sounded in Qin Feiyong's mind. Zhuge Shenfeng was frozen in the ancient tower. And the ancient tower, Qin Feiyong handed it over to Old Man Ren before leaving. Old Man Ren was settled in the Lu family. Nah. Zhuge Shenfeng was free, and the Lu family must have changed. Got it. Qin Feiyong secretly agreed.
He looked at the mysterious madam and the other three and cupped his hands. Take care.
You be careful too. The four reminded him. Qin Feiyong took a step and landed over a frozen lake, then went directly into the secret room at the bottom of the lake, opened the bloody altar, and left. The monkey-faced old man suddenly patted his head and said, I forgot one thing. What?
The mysterious lady, Yi Shu, and the aquiline-nosed old man looked at him suspiciously.
Qin Feiyong took my divine bow. I wanted to wait until I came out and discuss with him whether he could return it to me. But after the snow python, I forgot about it. The monkey-faced old man said angrily. The mysterious lady shook her head and smiled. Now that we are family, is there a need to ask for it back?
The monkey-faced old man frowned. But,
okay, after we get rid of Mu Tianyang and the others, I will get it back for you. Let's hurry back to the Central Divine Kingdom. If Mu Tianyang has escaped and we can't find him, we will immediately go to the Great Qin Empire to support Feiyong. The mysterious lady said. Okay. The three nodded. The mysterious madam opened a teleportation door. The four of them turned into streams of light and flew in like lightning. Butterfly Valley. Secret room. The bloody altar shone brightly. Soon, Qin Feiyong appeared on the altar. Then, he immediately revived the altar and went to the imperial capital. However, he was shocked to find that the altar could not be revived. What was going on? Little cousin, have you returned to the imperial capital? Lu Zheng's voice sounded again. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and Lu Zheng appeared. Seeing that Qin Feiyong was still in the secret room, he immediately said angrily, Why are you still here? The altar can't be revived. Qin Feiyong stared at the altar and said in a deep voice. It can't be revived? Lu Zheng was surprised. The power of the false god emerged and poured into the altar. Sure enough, the altar did not react at all. How can this be? If it can be revived from the forgotten continent, it means that there is no problem with this altar. Lu Zheng frowned. Suddenly, the two seemed to have thought of something and looked at each other at the same time. This should be the only possibility. The altar of the pagoda was destroyed by Zhuge Mingyang. Lu Zheng said, burning with anger. Qin Feiyong nodded. Lu Zheng urged, quickly go to the other 8 provinces. Qin Feiyong said, if it were you, would you only destroy one altar? There was no doubt. The bloody altars in the imperial capital's pagoda must have been destroyed. Zhuge Mingyang did this to make it impossible for them to enter the imperial capital. As long as they could not enter the imperial capital, Zhuge Mingyang could do whatever he wanted. Quickly think of a way. Lu Zheng roared. Chapter 1778. What's the hurry? Qin Feiyong glared at him angrily. The worse the situation was, the calmer he had to be. He pondered for a while. Qin Feiyong's eyes lit up as he took out a stone door. This is... Lu Zheng was overjoyed when he saw the stone door. Yes, this is the fake space-time gate. Qin Feiyong nodded and sneered. You think you can stop us in the 9 prefectures by destroying the altar? How naive. Lu Zheng was overjoyed and said, let's go directly to the Lu family. Go directly to the Lu family? Qin Feiyong frowned. Yes. Zhuge Shenfeng is free, and the Lu family will have a big change.
And now, in the entire imperial capital, only the Lu family can pose a threat to Zhuge Mingyang. If you were Zhuge Mingyang, what would you do after destroying the altar?
Lu Zheng said.
Get rid of the Lu family immediately. Qin Feiyong said without hesitation.
Yes. Maybe they are already in the Lu family now.
Lu Zhang said in a low voice. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed coldly. A wisp of divine power surged, and the space-time gate quickly opened.
Let's go.
Lu Zhang ran toward the space-time gate impatiently.
Wait.
Qin Feiyong reached out and grabbed him. What's wrong? Lu Zhang was suspicious. Qin Feiyong said, if Zhuge Mingyang and the others are really in the Lu family, then I need you to do something with me later.
What is it?
Lu Zheng asked. Qin Feiyong leaned over to Lu Zheng's ear and whispered a few words. Lu Zheng heard and was puzzled.
Why?
Just do as I say. Maybe this time, the truth will be revealed to the world. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed as he stepped out of the space-time gate. Lu Zheng followed closely behind. The Lu family. A small village in the middle of nowhere. Even if someone passed by, they wouldn't take a second look. The Lu family was just that low-key and simple. But today, countless experts had arrived. In the sky above the Lu clan, to the left, the soldiers of the Kirin army wore fiery red armor and stood in the wind. The long spears in their hands emitted a shocking sharpness. At a glance, it was estimated that there were more than 2,000 Kirin army. Their cultivation levels were basically all above the War Emperor level. Their bodies were filled with an austere aura. Simultaneously, on the right side of the sky above the Lu family, there was a group of black-clothed men. They stood side by side, exuding an aura that was even scarier than that of the Kirin army. The weakest among them was a 5-star combat emperor.
Yes.
They were the enforcers of the law enforcement hall. There were those from the outer hall and those from the inner hall. Their numbers also reached 2,000 to 3,000. As they looked down at the Lu clan below, their eyes emitted intense cold light. Other than that, there were also dozens of people. These people stood in front of the Kirin army and the law enforcers. Kirin army in front. A middle-aged man in golden armor stood in front of them. His face was rough and his eyes flashed with a fierce light. That's right. He was the commander of the Kirin army. Beside the commander of the Kirin army, there was another middle-aged man. This man was wearing a dragon robe and a dragon crown. His hands were behind his back, and his entire body exuded a vast aura of an emperor. That's right. He was Qin Feiyong's father. But now, he was wearing a dragon robe again. It was obvious that he had regained the throne and the power of the emperor. Moreover, his aura had also reached the level of a false god. It was obvious. After a few years, he had already broken through to the false god level. On both sides of the emperor and the commander of the Kirin army, there was a group of marquises standing respectfully. Beside the emperor, other than the commander of the Kirin army and a group of marquises, there were also 3 old men. The 3 of them looked extremely old, but they were extremely eye-catching when they stood in the crowd. Because they were all false gods. One of them had once fought with Qin Feiyong, and it was Qin Sheng. These 3 people were all existences who had sealed themselves in the back mountain of the imperial palace. Now they had all come out. It was conceivable that the emperor had led his people to the Lu family with no good intentions. And on the opposite side, in front of the law enforcers, there were 3 people standing side by side. They were Zhuge Mingyang, the state preceptor, and Emperor Hong, these 3 war gods. It could be said that the experts of the imperial palace had come out in full force this time.
You really think highly of my Lu family.
In the village below, 2nd Grandpa, 3rd Grandpa, and 4th Grandpa stood together, looking gloomily at the emperor and the others. The one who spoke was 2nd Grandpa. Behind the 3 of them, there were no less than 2,000 people gathered. Their cultivation was even more terrifying. They were all 9-star combat emperors, or the peak of 9-star combat emperors. As for the others, for example, women, children, and children stood in their own homes, looking at the state preceptors group. Their eyes were filled with cold light. The Lu family has been recuperating for so many years. How dare we look down on them? The state preceptor looked down at 2nd Grandpa and sneered. 2nd Grandpa said, "Then there's no need to trouble you 3 war gods, right?" The state preceptor revealed a look of surprise and said, You can actually see through our cultivation. It seems that you, old man, are not simple either. Ancestor, there's no need to talk nonsense with them. Just do it. Zhuge Mingyang smiled sinisterly, took a step forward, and his aura exploded. Kid, it's not your turn to be arrogant. Third Grandpa snorted coldly, took a step into the sky, and slapped towards Zhuge Mingyang. To deal with a mere fake god like you, I only need one finger. Zhuge Mingyang's face was full of disdain. He really only stretched out a finger, and a grayish-white divine power roared out. Boom! His fingertips and Third Grandpa's palm collided with each other. Third Grandpa was sent flying. His arm was shattered, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. With a bang, he smashed into the ground. Old 3. Second Grandpa's face changed drastically. Zhuge Mingyang smiled and said, "Don't be nervous. I didn't use my full strength. He won't die yet." As expected. Before he finished his words, Third Grandpa climbed up from the ground, his body covered in blood. He looked up at Zhuge Mingyang, his eyes full of wariness. The strength of a god of war was indeed extraordinary. A fake god was as insignificant as an ant in front of a god of war. No, they were even less than an ant. What should I do? I really don't want to kill you, but you have to die. I'm so conflicted. Zhuge Mingyang joked. Third Grandpa took a step forward and landed beside Second Grandpa and Fourth Grandpa. He said in a low voice, "Let's not talk about the others first. Just Zhuge Mingyang, the state preceptor, and Emperor Hong are 3 gods of war. We are no match for them." Fourth Grandpa's eyes flashed. Second Grandpa also frowned. Zhuge Mingyang laughed and said, "If Qin Feiyong can come, the Lu family will have a chance to survive." Second Grandpa was taken aback, and then he said happily, "Has Feiyong become a god of war?" "He hasn't. But he has a few subordinates who are gods of war. But unfortunately, the altar of the pagoda has been destroyed by me. The space-time gate has also been closed. In other words, the imperial capital is now a prison. No one can enter or leave." Zhuge Mingyang smiled. "What? The altar of the pagoda has been destroyed?" Second Grandpa's eyes trembled. The other members of the Lu family were also in an uproar. Very desperate, right? That's true. If it were anyone else, they would feel helpless when faced with such a situation. What a pity. The Lu family can be considered a hidden overlord, but now it's going to be destroyed, exterminated, and become a speck of dust in history. How about this? You submit to me and treat me as your master. I'll plead for mercy for you and ask His Majesty and the state preceptor to let you live." Zhuge Mingyang said playfully. "Submit to you? Treat you as my master? I'm afraid you don't have the right." Fourth Grandpa took a step forward and looked at Zhuge Mingyang. "Is that so?" Zhuge Mingyang smiled. Although the Lu family didn't enter the miracle site this time, the strength of the Lu family is not as weak as you think. Fourth Grandpa's expression was calm. He leaped and swept toward Zhuge Mingyang. "Is that so? Then I'll have to take a good look." Zhuge Mingyang's face was full of contempt. He still stretched out a finger and attacked Fourth Grandpa. Whoosh! But also at this moment, 2 figures silently appeared in the land of inheritance of the Lu family. They were Qin Feiyong and Lu Zheng. As soon as the 2 of them appeared, they saw this scene. Immediately, Lu Zheng's face changed color. Zhuge Mingyang was a god of war, and his means were extremely terrifying. How could Fourth Grandpa be his opponent? Wait! Just as Lu Zheng was about to rush over to help, Qin Feiyong grabbed Lu Zheng and shook his head. "Don't do it first." "Why? Are you going to leave him in the lurch?" Lu Zheng raised his eyebrows. "Everyone here is my family. How can I leave him in the lurch?" Qin Feiyong said angrily. "Then why are you doing this?" Lu Zheng was puzzled. Qin Feiyong said, "Don't you want to know how strong the Lu family's foundation is?" "You mean?" Lu Zheng was surprised. Although he was born in the Lu family, he really didn't know about the Lu family's foundation. Look at Fourth Grandpa. His expression is unimaginably calm. He must have something to rely on. "Let's take a look first," Qin Feiyong said. Okay. Lu Zheng nodded. If Qin Feiyong didn't do anything, it would be meaningless for him to go alone to help. Because he was just a pseudo-god. In the face of the powerful Zhuge Mingyang, he was no match at all. Whoosh! Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed as he entered the Black Tortoise realm. Old Man Qin, Zhao Tai Lai, Tang Hai, the Golden Leopard, and Xueqi were all in the herb field in the Devil's Land. Qin Feiyong glanced at the three of them and the Golden Leopard and asked, "How are you guys?" "We have already taken the Spirit Sea pill. We will be able to fight again soon," Old Man Qin said. "Very good." Qin Feiyong nodded. "Young master, when will you send me out? I really want to find someone to fight now." Xueqi grinned. "No hurry. There will be a time for you to show your strength," Qin Feiyong said. Okay. Xueqi nodded. Qin Feiyong waved his hand again, and the tens of thousands of cedars appeared in his body. Seeing this, Old Man Qin hurriedly said, "Feiyong, we have already taken the Spirit Sea pill. We don't need their help. Don't waste your vitality." Qin Feiyong said with a smile, "I didn't ask them to help you repair your Sea of Qi." "Then why?" Old Man Qin was suspicious. "Once this battle breaks out, I'm afraid it will be difficult to stop it. We don't know what will happen in the future. And these cedars are the key, because they can save our lives at a critical moment. So now, I ask them to come out and absorb the vitality of the Devil's Land to recover to their peak state," Qin Feiyong said. Chapter 1779. So that's how it is. Old Man Qin suddenly realized. Indeed. The existence of these cedars could play a crucial role. Qin Feiyong looked at the tens of thousands of cedars and bowed. "Everyone, thank you for your companionship and help along the way. This junior earnestly asks you to help this junior one more time. When this battle is over, whether to leave or stay, this junior will not force you." Tens of thousands of cedars shook at the same time, making rustling sounds, as if responding to Qin Feiyong. Immediately after, they turned into a stream of light, breaking through the air, taking root in various places of the Devil's Land, and began to absorb vitality. "Thank you," Qin Feiyong said gratefully in his heart, then left the Black Tortoise realm, and appeared beside Lu Zheng. Boom! As soon as he came out, he sensed a terrifying fluctuation of divine power. Looking at Lu Zheng again. At this moment, he stared at Fourth Grandpa, his eyes full of disbelief. Above the village, Fourth Grandpa supported himself with a walking stick, standing against the wind. His whole body was surrounded by dazzling flames, his expression extremely calm. And Zhuge Mingyang's fingers had been shattered, blood flowing out. At the scene, there was also a dead silence. Whether it was the state preceptor or Emperor Hong, they all looked at Fourth Grandpa dumbfounded. Divine power. Qin Feiyong's pupils contracted. The flames on Fourth Grandpa's body were actually transformed from divine power. In other words, Fourth Grandpa was a god of war. Lu Zhang took a cold breath and exclaimed, "Unbelievable, really unbelievable. I thought that Fourth Grandpa would be seriously injured by Zhuge Mingyang, but I didn't expect that Fourth Grandpa was actually a god of war." Qin Feiyong was also shocked. He had met Fourth Grandpa once, and the impression he gave people was a bit cold. But Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa were the exact opposite. They were very enthusiastic people. So among the three grandpas, he liked Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa the most. As for Fourth Grandpa, although he was also a close relative, he was not very attached. However, he did not expect that this somewhat cold old man was actually so strong. At this moment, Zhuge Mingyang also looked at Fourth Grandpa with a face of surprise. "This old man has already said that the Lu family's strength is not as simple as you think. And the Lu family is not a place where you can behave atrociously just because you want to." Fourth Grandpa looked at Zhuge Mingyang and said calmly. Whoosh! Zhuge Mingyang didn't say a word. He teleported and arrived in front of Fourth Grandpa with a murderous look. With the previous lesson in mind, he did not use a single finger this time. He clenched his fists and threw a punch at Fourth Grandpa, causing the void to collapse. Fourth Grandpa's expression didn't change as he sent a palm strike through the air. Divine power surged out. Fist and palm met in an instant. Accompanied by a loud bang, the two of them retreated a few steps at the same time, the skin on their arms lacerated. Lu Zhang was dumbfounded by what he saw. One had to know. Even though Fourth Grandpa was a god of war, Zhuge Mingyang's divine power was naturally stronger. However, at that moment the two of them were evenly matched.
It's divine power, Qin Feiyong said. Divine power?
Lu Zhang was surprised and doubtful.
Yes. Fourth Grandpa's divine power contains a very pure divine power of the divine phoenix. Look at Fourth Grandpa's blood, Qin Feiyong said.
Blood.
Lu Zhang was stunned.
After careful observation, his gaze suddenly trembled.
The blood that flowed out of Fourth Grandpa's body contained the power of the divine phoenix. The power of the divine phoenix. I remember Second Grandpa once said that the ancestors of the Lu family originally possessed the bloodline power of the divine phoenix. But none of the later generations could achieve ancestral awakening. I thought this was just a legend, but I didn't expect it to be true. In other words, Fourth Grandpa's bloodline has achieved ancestral awakening.
Lu Zhang said.
That should be the case. Qin Feiyong muttered. That's not right. Since the power of the divine phoenix can be compared to Zhuge Mingyang's divine power, why can't your purple gold divine dragon power compare to Zhuge Mingyang's divine power? Lu Zhang was suspicious. I'm also a little confused, Qin Feiyong said.
There's a god of war hidden in the Lu family.
In the sky above the village. The enforcers, the Kirin army, and the group of marquises all looked at Fourth Grandpa in shock. The emperor and the commander of the Kirin army also frowned. God of war. After Zhuge Mingyang stabilized his body, he looked at Fourth Grandpa and laughed. Not bad, not bad. Finally, I have a decent opponent. This is more interesting. Fourth Grandpa was silent. Zhuge Mingyang smiled and said, However, old man, do you really understand my strength? Boom. The Bone Dragon Battle Soul was activated. The innate divine ability enveloped the entire area. Fourth Grandpa's cultivation immediately dropped. What's going on? Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa's expressions changed. The people of the Lu family were also very surprised. This innate divine ability had the ability to deprive people of their cultivation? Fourth Grandpa's pupils shrank slightly. Under my innate divine ability, anyone can only despair. Zhuge Mingyang smiled ferociously and charged toward Fourth Grandpa. Fourth Grandpa quickly retreated. However, how could he, whose cultivation had dropped, be faster than Zhuge Mingyang? Zhuge Mingyang approached Fourth Grandpa with lightning speed and hit him in the chest. Puff! Fourth Grandpa spat out a mouthful of blood and smashed into the ground outside the village like a meteorite. Boom! The mountain collapsed and the ground cracked. Dust and smoke billowed. Fourth Grandpa. Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa shouted. Fourth Grandpa rushed out of the dust and landed beside Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa.
He said in a low voice. His strength is beyond our imagination.
We can only activate the defensive barrier now.
Activate the defensive barrier.
Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa's eyes trembled. What's a defensive barrier? Qin Feiyong asked suspiciously. I don't know either. Lu Zhang shook his head. Zhuge Mingyang and the others were also suspicious when they heard the words, defensive barrier. Second Grandpa frowned and said, Fourth Grandpa, the defensive barrier can only be activated once. Are you sure? Didn't Big Brother leave this defensive barrier to protect the descendants of the Lu family in times of crisis? But now, the Imperial Palace's experts have come out in full force. Our Lu family is in trouble. If we don't activate the defensive barrier now, when will we activate it? Fourth Grandpa said. Hearing this, Second Grandpa raised his head and glanced at Zhuge Mingyang and the others.
He then looked at the surrounding villagers and gritted his teeth.
Okay, activate the defensive barrier. Immediately.
Fourth Grandpa raised the crutch in his hand and poured his divine power into it.
That's Grandpa's crutch. Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. Boom. The next moment. A peerlessly terrifying aura roared out from the crutch. This aura caused everyone present to tremble. What's that? Zhuge Mingyang and the others stared at the crutch in surprise. Open! Fourth Grandpa suddenly let out a roar. The crutch suddenly burst out with a dazzling divine light. As soon as these divine lights emerged, they flooded in all directions. In less than 3 breaths, a huge barrier appeared in front of everyone's eyes, covering an area of thousands of miles. In short, the entire Lu family, including the land of inheritance, was within the range of the barrier. You think you can escape this disaster with a broken barrier? Naive. Zhuge Mingyang smiled contemptuously. Divine power poured out like a torrent and blasted toward the barrier. However, the next moment, he was dumbfounded. Divine power blasted on the barrier, but the barrier did not even shake. So strong? State Preceptor and Emperor Hong were also shocked. After regaining their senses, the two looked at each other and shouted, "Mingyang, we're here to help you." "No need. How can a mere barrier stump me?" Zhuge Mingyang sneered. A giant dragon appeared out of nowhere. The dragon roared. Followed closely. Another giant hand that blotted out the sky appeared. Demonic might overflowed. It was his divine art. Bone Dragon's secret art and demonic hand. The two divine arts carried monstrous divine power and blasted toward the barrier. Boom! With a loud noise, the two divine arts blasted on the barrier. But the result was that the barrier only shook for a moment and then immediately returned to normal. Zhuge Mingyang froze. A barrier created by a broken crutch was actually this sturdy? In the land of inheritance, Qin Feiyang and Lu Zhang were also dumbstruck when they saw this scene. Lu Zhang naturally did not need to say anything. Living here, he often saw that crutch. And Qin Feiyang had also seen this crutch the last time he entered the Lu family. But at that time, Fourth Grandpa only told him that this was his grandfather's crutch. He did not say that it had such terrifying divine power. And at that time on this crutch, except for a particularly strong sense of familiarity, he did not realize how powerful this crutch was. However, at this moment, even he was ashamed of his inferiority when it came to the power of the walking stick. He was not confident that he could break this barrier. Boom! The Imperial Advisor and Emperor Hong could no longer hold it in and attack together. Zhuge Mingyang did not refuse their help this time. Divine power was like a waterfall. The three of them all evolved their strongest divine arts and blasted toward the barrier. Rumble! The deafening sound was like thunder. The barrier was constantly trembling, but there was no sign of it breaking. How could this be? Emperor Hong and the other two were in disbelief. It's useless. Although this old man doesn't know how strong this barrier is, the boss said before he left that even if 10 initial stage war gods join forces, they won't be able to break it. Fourth Grandpa said expressionlessly. What? Even 10 initial stage war gods joining forces can't break it? The three of them were shocked. The commander of the Kirin army, the various marquis, and the law enforcers were also in disbelief. Don't be fooled by him. In this world, there is no barrier that can't be broken. Everyone, attack together with me. But at this moment, the emperor shouted. As soon as the emperor's voice sounded, Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the emperor, a cold light surging in his eyes. At this time, he was still helping Zhuge Mingyang. It was unforgivable. Then, he looked at the commander of the Kirin army again, and his killing intent was also aroused. In the past, he trusted this person so much, but he didn't expect that he would betray him. Of course. He had already guessed that the reason why the commander of the Kirin army betrayed him must be because of the emperor. Because this person was only loyal to the emperor. But even so, he couldn't stand it. Rumble. Clang. Above the village. As soon as the emperor's voice fell, everyone immediately used their strongest means and attacked the barrier together with Emperor Hong and the other two. For a time, this world was drowned by the aura of battle arts, battle souls, battle chi, divine arts, and divine power. A series of loud sounds shook the heavens and the earth. However, that barrier was like a stubborn stone. No matter how fiercely it was bombarded, it was not damaged in the slightest. That terrifying defense made people unable to help but despair. Powerless. Chapter 1780. Fourth Grandpa looked at the barrier, then at Zhuge Mingyang and the others, and said lightly, "Everything you've done is in vain." I don't believe it. When Lu Zhangyang was kidnapped, he was only a false god. How could he set up such a powerful barrier? Zhuge Mingyang roared. Not only you, but we also can't figure it out. How did Big Brother do it? But that's not important now, as long as we can stop you. Second Grandpa said. Grandpa was kidnapped? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but fly across the sky like lightning and land in front of Second Grandpa and the others. Feiyang. Second Grandpa, Third Grandpa, and Fourth Grandpa were stunned. Whoosh! Lu Zheng followed closely behind.
Zheng'er? The three of them were stunned again. Then,
the three of them were overjoyed. The other members of the Lu family were also overjoyed. At the same time, high in the sky, Zhuge Mingyang and the others also looked at Qin Feiyong in disbelief. Wasn't the altar destroyed? Wasn't the space-time gate closed? But how did these two people come back?
Impossible.
You're definitely not Qin Feiyong. Who are you? Zhuge Mingyang roared. Then he looked at the commander of the Kirin army, whose face was full of panic. Because he knew Qin Feiyong very well. Anyone who betrayed him would not have a good ending. However, Qin Feiyong didn't pay attention to him at all, nor did he answer Zhuge Mingyang.
He looked at Fourth Grandpa and said, "Do you remember what you said to me in the herb field?"
Fourth Grandpa's pupils shrank. "You may not remember, but I remember it clearly. At that time, you told me that Grandpa was in seclusion." "But is he really in seclusion?" Qin Feiyong said. Fourth Grandpa looked at Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa. However, the two old men looked away guiltily. Fourth Grandpa said angrily, "Second brother, third brother, that's not right of you. You were the ones who told me to say that." "Fourth brother, you?" The two of them immediately glared at Fourth Grandpa. Fourth Grandpa snorted and said, "I'm telling you, I'm not going to clean up this mess. You guys do as you see fit." Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa looked at each other with bitter smiles on their faces.
Qin Feiyong looked at the three of them and frowned.
"Is it fun to lie to me?" "Feiyong." Second Grandpa wanted to say something.
Qin Feiyong waved his hand and sighed. "I also know that all of you are doing this for my own good.
However, all of you have to understand me. After being deceived by all of you for so long, I feel like a fool." The three of them looked at each other and sighed. "Actually, I don't need you to tell me. I already have some understanding." Back at the miraculous site, the fiend ancestor vaguely revealed that grandfather had been kidnapped. Qin Feiyong said, "You've already met the fiend ancestor?" The three of them were surprised. Qin Feiyong nodded and said, "To be exact, it's just a wisp of the fiend ancestor's divine sense." The three of them wanted to say something but stopped. "I'll find out the truth myself." Qin Feiyong murmured and asked, "Is it true that the commander of the Kirin army betrayed us?" Hearing Qin Feiyong mention him, the commander of the Kirin army looked even more flustered. "How did you know?" Second Grandpa and the other two were stunned. "Didn't this guy just come back?" Qin Feiyong said, "Someone secretly told us. Sun Dahai's tip-off must not be revealed. Otherwise, it would bring him a fatal disaster." Second Grandpa said, "There aren't many people who know about this." "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyong was suspicious. "This happened in our Lu family. Our Lu family is located in a remote place where there are few people. Therefore, other than us, only the people from the imperial palace know about it. After that, the emperor gave a special order to block this news. Therefore, there are undoubtedly fewer people who know about this." Second Grandpa said. Qin Feiyong suddenly understood. In this case, it was even more important that Sun Dahai's tip-off was not revealed. Lu Zheng asked suspiciously, "Second Grandpa, what exactly happened?" "This happened half a year ago. One day half a year ago, the commander of the Kirin army came to me and Old Master Ren, saying that he wanted to take a look at the ancient pagoda. At that time, because this person had a good relationship with Feiyong, we didn't suspect anything.
So, Old Master Ren took him in.
But not long after he went in, he took Old Master Ren hostage and came out with Zhuge Shenfeng. You all know Zhuge Shenfeng's identity, right?" Second Grandpa asked. Qin Feiyong and Lu Zheng nodded. Zhuge Shenfeng and the state preceptor were brothers. Of course they knew. Originally, we wanted to force them to stay, but because Old Master Ren was in their hands, we didn't dare to do it. Second Grandpa sighed. Isn't Fourth Grandpa a god of war? Even if Zhuge Shenfeng escaped, he was only a false god. How could he not be able to stop them? Qin Feiyong frowned. If that was the case, Zhuge Shenfeng and the others definitely wouldn't be able to escape.
But just as we were about to make a move, a god of war descended.
According to that god of war, it was a subordinate of the demon ancestor. Second Grandpa said. A god of war. Qin Feiyong was shocked.
There was a god of war hidden in the great Qin Empire? You also know that a god of war level god of war is not that easy to deal with, so we had no choice but to let you go. Second Grandpa sighed. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, "What about the ancient pagoda?" Second Grandpa said, "It was also taken away by that god of war." Qin Feiyang said, "So not only old Master Ren, but everyone in the ancient pagoda also fell into the hands of that god of war?" "Yes." Second Grandpa nodded. "Where is that god of war now?" Qin Feiyang said angrily. Second Grandpa glanced at Zhuge Mingyang and the others and sent a voice transmission. Right after the gate of time and space closed, your Uncle Black sent me a message saying that after the divine beast met with Zhuge Mingyang and the others, it opened the teleportation gate and left. What about Zhuge Shenfeng? Qin Feiyang said. He also left with that god of war. Second Grandpa said. That god of war must have taken the demon ancestor's divine body to the reincarnation ocean. Qin Feiyang sighed. It's all that damn snow python's fault. If it wasn't for her, that god of war wouldn't have had the chance to take away the demon ancestor's divine body. Lu Zheng was furious. Don't worry. I'll settle this score with her. Now, let's deal with these people first. As for old Master Ran and the others, as long as I'm not dead, they shouldn't be in danger. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. Marquis Xiao was also killed, right? Yes. It can be said that Marquis Xiao died the most unjustly. Because he supported you, he was swallowed alive by that god of war. Second Grandpa said. I won't let him die unjustly. Qin Feiyang clenched his hands and asked, Can I go out of this barrier? Yes. But once you go out, you can't come in again. Because I can't control this barrier. I can only wait for it to dissipate. Fourth Grandpa said. It doesn't matter if you can come in again. Qin Feiyang shook his head and asked, How long will it take before it dissipates? 1 day. This is what your grandfather said himself. Fourth Grandpa said. 1 day? It's enough to deal with them. Qin Feiyang muttered to himself and said with a smile, You 3 elders can just stand here and watch. You can even make a pot of tea and drink it while watching the battle. The 3 of them were stunned. Make a pot of tea and drink it while watching? Was he that confident? Second Grandpa said secretly, Fourth Grandpa, what's this kid's cultivation level now? False god. Fourth Grandpa transmitted his voice. Brat, a mere false god dares to be so arrogant? Second Grandpa cursed secretly. However, it was also worth looking forward to. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and secretly said to Lu Zheng, Act according to the plan. Okay. Lu Zheng replied. At this time, Qin Feiyang finally raised his head and looked at Zhuge Mingyang. Zhuge Mingyang said angrily, Tell me, how did you come back? It was indeed a good idea for you to destroy the altar. If it were me, I would have done the same. However, there's a good saying that there's always a path before a mountain. Qin Feiyang said. What are you so proud of? If you have the guts, don't hide in that barrier. Come out and fight with me for 300 rounds. Zhuge Mingyang was seething with anger. The state preceptor frowned and reminded, Mingyang, don't be provoked by him. Zhuge Mingyang was stunned, and his anger immediately dissipated. He laughed cruelly and said, Qin Feiyang, don't say that I look down on you. I'm afraid you don't dare to come out now. Instead, you're provoking me? Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. Yes, I'm provoking you. Do you want to come out or not? Zhuge Mingyang sneered. As you wish. Qin Feiyang said word by word, rushed out of the barrier, and stood in the void. Little cousin, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Old Man Qin and Zhao Tai Lai are in Forgotten Continent. What are you doing out there? Lu Zheng's expression immediately changed, and he roared. Shut up. Qin Feiyang immediately lowered his head and glared at Lu Zheng, shouting, Didn't I say that this matter must be kept a secret? Lu Zheng's expression froze, and he blamed himself. I'm sorry, in a moment of desperation, I forgot. What? Old Man Qin and the others are in Forgotten Continent? Zhuge Mingyang, the state preceptor, and Emperor Hong looked at each other. Was this true? If so, then this Qin Feiyang, wouldn't there be no threat? You really can't accomplish anything, but you're good at spoiling things. Qin Feiyang glared fiercely at Lu Zheng. Lu Zhang raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "Although I spilled the beans, I'm still your cousin. Aren't you being too impudent by saying that to me?" Qin Feiyong didn't pay any more attention to him. He looked at Zhuge Mingyang and said, "Old man Qin and the others are the strongest fighting force by my side. Would you believe that I would leave them behind in Forgotten Continent?" Haha. If this sentence came from someone else's mouth, I definitely wouldn't believe it. But Lu Zhang is your cousin. You're worried, and you spilled the beans. How could it be fake? Don't pretend to be calm anymore. Your tricks are useless against me. Zhuge Mingyang laughed, his face full of ridicule. It's good that you believe it. Qin Feiyong muttered secretly. If Zhuge Mingyang didn't believe it, he would be in a difficult position. Zhuge Mingyang asked curiously, "But I don't understand. Why do you want to leave old man Qin and the others in Forgotten Continent? You're so smart. Do you still need me to answer?" Qin Feiyong coldly snorted. "So, as I expected, the battle between you and Mu Tianyang has already begun, and you left old man Qin and the others in Forgotten Continent to deal with Mu Tianyang?" Zhuge Mingyang said. "You know too much," Qin Feiyong said. "I see. The Mu family has Mu Changfeng and Mu Changyun, these two gods of war. Mu Tianyang even has a heaven-defying artifact. The mysterious Madam and Yi Shu alone are no match for them. So, old man Qin and the others must stay in Forgotten Continent. And you, after knowing that the commander of the Kirin army betrayed you, had no choice but to come back alone." Zhuge Mingyang laughed. The imperial tutor and Emperor Hong also revealed a victorious smile. Old man Qin, Zhao Tailai, Tang Hai, and Shen Leopard weren't here, so this battle was basically suspenseful. What a self-righteous person. There will be a time for you to cry later. Lu Zhang secretly sneered. But until now, he still didn't understand why Qin Feiyong would lie to Zhuge Mingyang and the others. Chapter 1781. Qin Feiyong scanned the audience. Zhuge Mingyang, the imperial tutor, and Emperor Hong's eyes were all in his eyes. However, he didn't pay attention to them. He turned around and looked at the emperor, the three of them, the commander of the Kirin army, and the group of Marquis. "You still dare to ignore me?" Zhuge Mingyang was furious. The imperial tutor reached out and grabbed him, secretly laughing. "Mingyang, don't worry." Zhuge Mingyang was suspicious. Although the father and son have fought for so many years, they have never really fought. This time, the commander of the Kirin army has betrayed us. Qin Feiyong will definitely not let it go. And the emperor is also involved in everything that the Kirin army has done. Think about it, with Qin Feiyong's character, will he let him go? So let's just watch quietly. There will definitely be a good show later. The imperial tutor secretly said. Zhuge Mingyang was stunned and laughed. The ancestor is wise. Father and son killing each other is more satisfying than directly killing him. That's right. Old Qin and Zhao Tailai are all fighting with Mu Tianyang in the Forgotten Continent, so we don't need to rush to get rid of him. The imperial tutor said. Zhuge Mingyang nodded and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He calmly looked at Qin Feiyong and the emperor with a playful expression on his face. Then look at the emperor and the others. Facing Qin Feiyong's gaze, the commander of the Kirin army was extremely flustered, lowering his head, not daring to look directly at him. The group of Marquis also kept quiet out of fear. Only the three of them and the emperor stared straight at Qin Feiyong. Because they all had the cultivation of the false god, and could block that invisible deterrence. Qin Shang sighed. "Qin Feiyong, you are a subject of my great Qin. Is there a need to make such a fuss? Quickly turn back." "Turn back?" Qin Feiyong muttered. "Do you still remember the last time I killed Zhuge Xingfeng at the back mountain of the imperial palace?" "I remember. I even stepped forward to stop you." Qin Shang nodded. Qin Feiyong said. "Then do you still remember what I said to you at that time?" Qin Shang frowned, as if he was recalling the situation at that time. Qin Feiyong said, "Back then, I told you that you are a fake god of Great Qin, so why are you helping the evildoers?" "Yes, you did say that. At that time, I also told you that it was precisely because this old man was a member of Great Qin that I would not allow you to act impudently in the imperial capital." Qin Shang said. "I also said that one day, you will understand who was right and who was wrong. I can even tell you that Emperor Hong is lying, that the imperial teacher is thinking about my great Qin's rivers and mountains, right?
Qin Feiyong said. That's right. Qin Sheng nodded. When the imperial teacher and Emperor Hong heard this, they immediately frowned. Who would have thought that Qin Feiyong would actually say these words to Qin Sheng? Qin Sheng looked at the two of them, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "You said so, but after thinking about it, I found that it was impossible." "Why?" Qin Feiyong frowned. "Because Emperor Hong is your great-grandfather. Blood is thicker than water. How could he lie to the world and frame you? Then there is the imperial teacher. He is your father's master, and has been by your father's side all year round. If he really has this ambition, he can kill His Majesty at any time. But he didn't do that. This means that he is indeed loyal to my great Qin." Qin Sheng said. "I see." Qin Feiyong nodded in realization and said with a smile, "What you said makes sense. So, quickly turn back. I will persuade His Majesty to forgive your past mistakes. Look at you, stepping into the false god realm at such a young age. Your future will definitely be limitless. As long as you are willing to turn over a new leaf in time, you will definitely become the pillar of my great Qin, an existence that the world admires and worships." Qin Sheng said. "Turn over a new leaf. The world admires and worships." Qin Feiyong murmured. In his heart, an inexplicable sadness rose. In fact, it was not difficult to tell that Qin Sheng was the same as Elder Qin, sincerely thinking for the great Qin. They all hoped that the great Qin could get better and better. However, this person was blinded by the illusion of the imperial teacher and the others. Wasn't this a very sad thing? There was no point in continuing. It was time to make a move. Immediately, Qin Feiyong's eyes suddenly surged with killing intent. "Qin Feiyong, don't be stubborn." Seeing this, Qin Sheng and the other two shouted angrily and immediately stood in front of the emperor. The commander of the Kirin army glanced at Qin Feiyong, then at the three of them and murmured, "Three false gods, it shouldn't be a problem, right?" Swish! But just as he spoke, Qin Feiyong took a step forward and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Qin Sheng and the other two scanned the void in surprise. Where did he go? Did he go to the ancient castle? The emperor also had a trace of doubt between his eyebrows. But in the next moment, Qin Feiyong appeared behind the commander of the Kirin army. As soon as the commander of the Kirin army sensed Qin Feiyong's aura, mixed colors hair stood on end and cold sweat poured down like rain. He felt as if there was a grim reaper behind him. He wanted to run away. But he found that his legs were weak and he could not even move a step. So fast. The three of them and the emperor were shocked. He had appeared behind the commander of the Kirin army in an instant. "I don't object to your loyalty to the emperor. In fact, I'm very impressed, because at least this shows that you're a very loyal person. But you shouldn't have helped Zhuge Shenfeng escape." Qin Feiyong said softly. The commander of the Kirin army stammered, his body trembling violently, and he was extremely frightened. The emperor suddenly turned around and stared at Qin Feiyong, and said word by word, "Don't you dare touch him." "Ha ha." Qin Feiyong was stunned, then laughed and said, "It seems that you still don't know me well. There's nothing in this world that I don't dare to do." Boom. Crack. The power of the false god appeared, and he grabbed the commander of the Kirin army by the head and suddenly squeezed his 5 fingers. The commander of the Kirin army's head exploded like a watermelon, and brain matter splattered everywhere. Kill. The marquises and the Kirin army were all stunned. The emperor's face also became extremely ugly. The three of them also looked gloomy. Looking at this scene, the state master secretly laughed and said, "Ming Yang, see, the show is about to start. Fight, fight, it's best if you can kill all of them, so that I won't have to do it again in the future." Zhuge Mingyang laughed in his heart. Then he looked at Qin Feiyong. He clapped his hands, turned to look at the emperor, and said with a bright smile, "What can you do if I kill them?" The emperor clenched his hands. Boom. All of a sudden, a terrifying power of the false god appeared, like a peerless storm, sweeping across the sky. The Kirin army and the marquises all retreated. However, Qin Feiyong, who was in the center of the storm, was not affected at all, as if nothing had happened. "The one thing that I regret most in my life is giving birth to a bastard like you. Today, I will put righteousness before family and get rid of you."
The emperor's expression was indifferent, and the golden power of the false god, like a torrent, rushed toward Qin Feiyong.
Then do you know what is the saddest thing in my life, and what I hate the most?
It is having a father like you.
Qin Feiyong was furious, and the purple gold dragon Qi roared in the sky, and collided with the emperor's power of the false god. The space around them began to distort.
Waves of terrifying air waves full of destructive power, covering the sky and the earth, rushed in all directions.
Since you hate it so much, why don't you find a place to die quietly?
Death is the end of all troubles.
The emperor roared, and the power of the false god turned into a golden dragon. The dragon's power shook the world, and rushed toward Qin Feiyong.
This was the evolution of the divine art.
The divine power shook all directions. If I die, what will you do? There will be no one to collect your body. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and a sword shadow flew out, almost tearing the sky. Guiyuan sword technique. His Guiyuan sword technique had evolved into a divine art. Although it was only a low-tier divine art, the emperor's divine art, according to his observation, was only at this level.
Roar! Clang! Boom!
The dragon roared, and the sword shadow screamed. The two divine arts collided.
Sure enough,
this golden dragon was only a low-tier divine art. The moment they met, there was an earth-shattering bang, and the two immediately collapsed in the void.
However, although for Qin Feiyong it was like playing house for the Kirin army and Marquis, it was like the existence of the divine art.
They fled frantically. But even so, they were blown away by the airwaves. One by one, they spat out blood, and their faces were pale. Their bodies were also covered with bruises. In just a moment, they were all seriously injured. And this was with the help of Qin Shang and the others, who blocked most of the divine art. Otherwise they would have all died. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and the airwaves around them calmed down. He looked at the emperor and said disdainfully, "After cultivating in Yuzhou for so long, is this all you've made? You've been cultivating in the divine ruins for a few years, and I don't think you've made much progress."
The emperor snorted.
The power of the false god kept roaring. Golden dragons appeared one after another. Each golden dragon was over a few thousand zhang long. They roared and danced in the sky like magnificent mountains. The divine art shook the sky.
Ha!
You can never imagine my growth in the divine ruins. To put it bluntly, the god of war is just an ant in front of me. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and the red sword Qi surged.
Clang!
One sword shadow after another appeared in the sky above his head. The sharpness was terrifying. At last, the number of sword shadows reached 60. Originally, after breaking through to the god of war, he could already condense 70 sword shadows. But at this moment, he suppressed his cultivation. So, he could only condense 60. Qin Feiyong's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and he shouted, "Today, let's settle this." "That's what I want," the emperor said. As soon as he finished speaking, the two waved their hands at the same time, and the sword shadows and golden dragons suddenly roared out and attacked each other.
Boom! Clang!
The two collided in the void. The sword shadows wailed. The golden dragons howled. They kept collapsing and disintegrating. The fire and golden light illuminated the sky and the earth. Chapter 1782. What is this kid doing? Inside the barrier. Lu Zheng looked at Qin Feiyong and frowned. "What are you mumbling about?" Second Grandpa asked suspiciously. Lu Zheng thought to himself, "I'm wondering why he doesn't kill the emperor quickly. Do you think the emperor is a pushover? He's a fake god now. I don't deny Feiyong's means, but it's not that easy to kill a fake god." Second Grandpa said.
Lu Zheng was stunned.
"What's wrong?
Look at your expression. Am I wrong?"
Second Grandpa was suspicious.
No.
Lu Zheng waved his hand and smiled secretly. "You're right. The emperor is a fake god after all. I'm afraid it's difficult for my little cousin to defeat him." But he didn't think so. "Old man, you still don't know your grandson's methods. Fake god?
Haha.
It's not enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Bastard, today is the day you die." After the last sword shadow collided with the last golden dragon, the emperor roared and instantly activated his fighting soul. The emperor prison shrouded Qin Feiyong. Swish! Qin Feiyong was immediately imprisoned in the void. Without saying a word, the emperor stepped forward and slapped Qin Feiyong's chest. You want to imprison me with your emperor prison? Qin Feiyong sneered. His body shook, and he immediately got rid of the emperor prison's shackles. Then he threw a punch. Bang! The fist and the palm collided. The emperor's arm was torn open. I don't even need to activate my fighting soul to deal with you. Qin Feiyong used the walk formula and appeared behind the emperor with a cold expression. He slapped the emperor's back. Puff! The emperor spat out a mouthful of blood and smashed into the barrier below like a meteorite. Blood flowed from his back. So strong? The three of them were shocked. They were all fake gods, but why was there such a big gap in strength? Today is not the day I die, but the day you die. And after you die, don't even think about entering the Imperial Mausoleum. Because you don't deserve it. Qin Feiyong's aura was like a rainbow as he swooped down at lightning speed toward the emperor. The Imperial Mausoleum was behind the Imperial Palace. It was the tomb of the Qin clan. Only the descendants of the Qin clan were qualified to be buried in the Imperial Mausoleum. The emperor roared. Wasn't it enough that you killed your brother? Now you want to kill your father? I have already returned the bloodline power to you. How can you talk about patricide? Qin Feiyong didn't move in the slightest. An invisible force surged around him. Now, the Ruin's End incantation had evolved into a mid-tier divine incantation. Although it was only a grade lower than a low-tier deity art, the difference in power was like heaven and earth. If the emperor did not have the intermediate deity formula, he would definitely die. Calm. The three of them streaked across the sky like lightning and landed beside the emperor. What is it? Qin Feiyong said. You forced us to do this. If you can mend your ways, everyone will be happy. But there's no other way. You're too stubborn. We can only kill you for the sake of the people. Qin Sheng said. Kill you for the sake of the people. Then come. Let me see if the three of you are worthy of being the pillars of the great Qin dynasty. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and the surging formless energy around him immediately turned into a huge wave that pounced towards the four people. Back off. I don't need your help. But the emperor didn't appreciate it and shouted at the three of them. Your Majesty. The three of them were very anxious. What? Even you want to defy my order? The emperor said angrily. We wouldn't dare. The three of them quickly lowered their heads and looked at each other before silently retreating to the side. Your growth is indeed beyond my expectations. But if this is all you've got, I'm afraid I'll be the one to collect your corpse today. The monarch raised his head and coldly looked at Qin Feiyong. After he finished speaking, he shouted, 9 dragons god extinguishing formation. As soon as he finished speaking, the boundless false god power poured out like a flood from an open dam. Roar! Accompanied by a series of deafening dragon roars, 9 giant golden dragons were born. The 9 dragons roared in the sky and joined together to form a 9-pointed star pattern. Boom! Immediately, a shocking divine power erupted, shaking the void and the earth. Qin Feiyong was surprised. The aura of the 9 dragons god-killing array had reached the level of a middle-class divine art. I'm the emperor. In front of me, all things are ants. Kill! The emperor shouted in a sonorous voice. The 9-pointed star pattern suddenly rushed into the sky with the power to destroy the world and blasted toward the invisible force. Boom! The two suddenly collided. The sky changed color and the clouds surged. Puff! Qin Feiyong's body trembled slightly, and a trace of blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. What? Little cousin is injured. Lu Zheng was shocked. Was the 9 dragons god-killing array so terrifying? However, the emperor also took a few steps back, his face extremely pale. He looked at Qin Feiyong in shock and said, You're also a middle-class divine art? Is it strange that I have a middle-class divine art? Qin Feiyong sneered and used the Xing formula. As if he had teleported, he landed in front of the emperor. Bang! He raised his right foot and kicked the emperor's left knee directly. Crack! The knee immediately shattered. The emperor staggered and almost knelt down. However, before he could stabilize his body, Qin Feiyong kicked his right knee again. With a crack, the emperor's right knee also shattered. Immediately, the emperor knelt down powerlessly. Qin Feiyong,
Don't be presumptuous. The three of them shouted and hurried forward to support the emperor. One of the old men stared at Qin Feiyong and shouted, "He's your father.
Can you bear his kneeling?
He has to pay the price for doing wrong. I'm not asking him to kneel to me.
I just want him to repent before he dies."
Qin Feiyong said expressionlessly.
"You're really a beast."
The old man was burning with anger.
His aura surged out and he slapped Qin Feiyong's forehead between his eyebrows. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows, raised his big hand, grabbed the old man's wrist, and then squeezed hard. The old man's wrist suddenly shattered with a crack. The old man's face twisted in pain. "This power. Is this your real strength?"
Qin Shang's eyes widened in anger. "My real strength," Qin Feiyong murmured and said. "I'm afraid you won't have the chance to see it."
Swish.
After that, he let go of the old man's wrist, retreated dozens of feet like lightning, and made a seal with both hands.
Boom. A palm-sized divine seal appeared.
The divine seal was fiery red, and at the bottom was a vivid divine phoenix.
It was the Fire Phoenix seal.
The aura of the Fire Phoenix seal. Second grandpa, third grandpa, and fourth grandpa looked at the Fire Phoenix seal, their old eyes full of surprise.
Lu Zhang smiled and said, "Do you feel that it's stronger than the Fire Phoenix seal that we evolved?" The three of them nodded. "Because little cousin has already upgraded the level of the Fire Phoenix technique,"
Lu Zhang said.
"Upgraded the level of the Fire Phoenix technique?"
The three of them looked at him suspiciously.
"Yes. The Fire Phoenix technique that he has mastered is the same as Big Brother's, a high-tier divine technique," Lu Zhang said.
"High-tier divine technique."
The three of them murmured, their eyes full of disbelief.
As the descendants and elders of the Lu family, of course they knew the Fire Phoenix technique best.
Once, when the ancestors of the Lu family left the inheritance, the Fire Phoenix technique was indeed only a middle-tier battle technique. But they didn't expect that this kid could actually upgrade the Fire Phoenix technique.
"Wait.
Where's your big brother?
Why don't I see him?"
Second grandpa looked at the Lu family and asked in surprise.
"Big brother
Lu Zhang murmured and sighed. "We'll talk about Big Brother after this is over." "What's with your expression?"
"Could it be that your big brother?" When second grandpa and the other two said this, a wave of sadness that could not be dissipated immediately rose up from their bodies.
Lu Zhang hurriedly said, "Don't worry, Big Brother should be alive now." "What do you mean by should be alive?" "If he's dead, he's dead. If he's not dead, he's not dead," second grandpa said angrily. "It's a long story." Lu Zhang sighed deeply. In the sky, Qin Feiyong stood in the wind, the Fire Phoenix seal exuding a godly aura that could shake the heavens. The three of them also saw that the Fire Phoenix seal was extraordinary, and their eyes were extremely serious. The emperor stared at Qin Feiyong and said in a low voice, "This bastard's growth has exceeded our expectations. Let's fight to the death." The three of them nodded. Boom. The golden false god power appeared, and the emperor once again evolved the 9 dragons god-destroying formation. Qin Shang and the other two's bodies shook as they poured out their false god power without holding back. Clang. Boom. Accompanied by a series of loud noises, the false god power of the three of them condensed into 3 different divine weapons in the sky. A pitch-black battle axe. A golden palace. A fiery red battle sword. These were their divine arts. The terrifying aura and sharpness shocked all directions. "Kill!" The emperor roared. The 9 dragons god-destroying formation rushed forward. The divine arts of the three of them also carried monstrous power and rushed toward Qin Feiyong. "It's just a low-grade divine art. What can it do?" Qin Feiyong said coldly. The Fire Phoenix seal in front of him suddenly expanded. In an instant, it turned into a towering mountain. Boom. As he waved his hand, the Fire Phoenix seal roared out. The 9 dragons god-destroying formation was instantly annihilated. The divine arts of the three of them also shattered one after another without causing any disturbance. It could be said that it was completely unstoppable. Qin Feiyong glanced at the three of them and said disappointedly, "With your strength, you don't deserve to be the pillars of the great Qin dynasty." "We are sure that we don't deserve to be. However, we will not allow anyone who wants to shake the great Qin dynasty. We are willing to defend and protect the great Qin dynasty with our lives."
The three of them roared. Defend and protect with our lives, Qin Feiyong murmured. Wasn't this the same as him? He had been defending and protecting the great Qin dynasty with his life all this time. Qin Feiyong, I don't care what you want to do. But as long as you threaten the great Qin dynasty and its people, we will fight you to the end. Even if we die, we will not regret it. Qin Sheng enunciated each and every word clearly and powerfully. Clang! An earth-shattering sound exploded in Qin Sheng's body. Boom! Then, a palm-sized ancient pagoda flew out from between Qin Sheng's eyebrows. Immediately, the entire area was enveloped in a sea of divine might. Chapter 1783. The ancient pagoda was completely black and shrouded in black mist. Although it was only the size of a palm, its power was astonishing. Seeing the ancient pagoda, Qin Feiyong's eyes were filled with surprise. Because this ancient pagoda was almost exactly the same as the divine prison in the back mountain of the imperial palace. Yes. As you think, this is the divine prison. But you definitely didn't expect that the divine prison is a divine artifact. Qin Sheng said. The divine prison is a divine artifact, Qin Feiyong murmured. In the past, old Qin and second grandpa had told him that the imperial palace was not as simple as it seemed. In the end it was true. Follow me to revive the divine prison. Qin Sheng shouted. The other two old men nodded. The power of the false gods poured into the divine prison, and the aura emitted by the divine prison became more and more terrifying. Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice, You are only false gods. If you revive the divine artifact without thinking of the consequences, it will not do you any good. It doesn't matter. Even if we suffer the backlash of the divine artifact, we will fight to the end. Qin Sheng said. For the sake of righteousness, you are willing to sacrifice yourself. Truly admirable. I take back what I said before. You are worthy of being the pillars of my great Qin. However, I will not allow anyone to stand in front of me. To show my respect for you, I will use 1/10 of my strength to end this battle. Qin Feiyong said. What? Is this kid talking nonsense? Using 1/10 of his strength, doesn't that mean that the strength he showed before is not even 1/10? Second grandpa and the others were stunned. When the three of them heard this, they couldn't help but be furious. 1/10? Wasn't this humiliating them? But in this regard, Lu Zhang, Zhuge Mingyang, the state preceptor, and Emperor Hong did not refute. Because this was the truth. Although the Fire Phoenix art, the Void Returning art, and the Gui Yuan sword art had all appeared in succession, it had to be known that Qin Feiyong's strongest divine arts were not these few. Looking at their reactions, Qin Feiyong shook his head and said, I didn't mean to humiliate you at all. On the contrary, the fact that you can make me use 1/10 of my strength is enough to prove your position in my heart. However, the three of them did not think so. They were reviving the god's prison without any regard for their lives. The emperor glanced at Qin Feiyong and the other two. He stared coldly at Qin Feiyong and said, You are still the same as before. You haven't changed at all. You look down on everyone and think that you are the best in the world. Qin Feiyong said indifferently, The one who has the least right to speak here is you. Qualifications? You dare to talk about qualifications with me? The emperor seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. Clang! Right at this moment, a deafening sound came from the divine prison. Qin Sheng and the other two were trembling and their faces were extremely pale. It was obvious that they had reached their limits. Qin Feiyong, prepare to face our wrath. The three of them looked at each other and roared. The divine prison shook the sky and aggressively blasted toward Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong glanced at the emperor, then turned his gaze and locked onto the divine prison. Boom! All of a sudden, a divine seal appeared in the void in front of him without any warning. That's right. It was the divine dragon seal. The divine dragon technique, which had evolved into a perfect divine technique, no longer needed to make seals. It could be evolved with just a thought. A perfect divine technique. This bastard is really infuriating. Zhuge Mingyang clenched his fingers and was extremely unhappy. How could this person be more outstanding than him? He should be the #1 genius of the great Qin dynasty. What Qin Feiyong? What Lu Jiajin? What qualifications did they have to be above Zhuge Mingyang? Boom! The divine dragon seal and the divine prison shook the sky and collided. In an instant, a dazzling divine light bloomed in this place. Those Kirin army and Marquis who had fled far away couldn't help but close their eyes. At the same time, a wave of chi that could destroy the world surged out in all directions like a tidal wave. Feeling the aura emitted by the airwave, the law enforcers couldn't help but be frightened even though they were protected by the National Master and the other two. Clang! In the void, the divine prison and the divine dragon seal were in a stalemate. But just when Qin Shang and the other two thought that they could compete with Qin Feiyang, the aura of the divine dragon seal suddenly soared. Now, the divine dragon seal exerted its full power. The divine prison was immediately blasted away. Qin Shang and the other two vomited blood and their eyes were full of horror. Even the awakened divine artifact couldn't resist the divine dragon seal? This is too terrifying. The divine prison crashed into the distant mountains, and the surrounding tens of thousands of miles were directly razed to the ground. But the divine dragon seal was still there. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and the divine dragon seal whizzed toward Qin Shang and the other two and the emperor. Qin Shang shouted, "Your Majesty, run!" The other two old men also stood in front of the emperor and stared at the divine dragon seal, their faces full of anxiety. "I'm the emperor of a country. How can I run away?" Even though his life was at stake, the emperor's expression didn't change. Qin Shang said angrily, "Your Majesty, is face more important than life?" The emperor turned a deaf ear. Qin Shang was burning with anxiety. Suddenly, he turned his head and stared at Qin Feiyang with a hint of madness in his old eyes. "Qin Feiyang, if you insist on killing the emperor, then this old man can only perish together with you." Qin Shang shouted and flew toward the divine dragon seal without looking back. The two old men were shocked and angry. "Qin Shang, what are you doing? Death is as light as a feather and as heavy as Mount Tai. For the great Qin dynasty, I will die a worthy death," Qin Shang said, and a destructive aura suddenly rushed out of his body. "This is self-explosion." The two old men's eyes trembled. "Take His Majesty away," Qin Shang roared. The two men's eyes couldn't help but moisten. They resolutely turned around and carried the emperor away. Looking at the emperor leaving, Qin Shang chuckled. He turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang and said, "This old man once thought of 10,000 ways to die, but I never thought that in the end, I would die together with you." Qin Feiyang remained silent, but he didn't stop either. His eyes were filled with endless indifference. However, if one looked carefully, they would find that he was secretly paying attention to Zhuge Mingyang and the other two. In fact, he was forcing Zhuge Mingyang and the other two to make a move. But he also knew that the possibility of Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor making a move was extremely small, because the two originally planned to usurp the throne. If Qin Shang and the other two died here, it would be a good thing for them. Therefore, his main target was the Hong Emperor. The Hong Emperor was the son of the previous emperor and the emperor's grandfather. He didn't believe that this old man would be indifferent. In the blink of an eye, the divine dragon seal had arrived in front of Qin Shang. Qin Shang's self-destruction was about to become a foregone conclusion. But at this moment, the Hong Emperor suddenly teleported and rushed towards Qin Shang. At the same time, the inner demon's Hong Emperor also appeared out of thin air and immediately rushed towards Qin Feiyang. His eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light. The distance between the two was not far. In addition, the inner demon's Hong Emperor used teleportation. Almost in an instant, he rushed behind Qin Feiyang. Immediately, he slapped towards Qin Feiyang's back, his palm gushing with divine power. Obviously, he wanted to destroy Qin Feiyang's sea of qi in one fell swoop. Finally made a move? I didn't wait in vain, Qin Feiyang muttered in his heart. However, he didn't dodge, nor did he counterattack. Boom! The inner demon's Hong Emperor's palm fell. Qin Feiyang flew out like a meteorite on the spot, smashing into the ground outside the village. A huge pit suddenly appeared. Dust and smoke covered the sky. At the same time, the Hong Emperor himself also rushed to Qin Shang's side. His arm explosively stretched out and pressed on Qin Shang's shoulder. Qin Shang's self-destruction was forcibly cut off. "Lord Hong Emperor." Qin Shang looked at him in a daze. The Hong Emperor ignored him and turned to slap the divine dragon seal. The divine dragon seal was also shattered.
Although the divine dragon seal was a perfect divine art, because Qin Feiyong suppressed his cultivation, its power did not reach its true peak. Because of this, the Hong Emperor could defeat it with one palm. All of this was said to be slow, but the whole process happened in an instant. Not only the state preceptor and Zhuge Mingyang, but also Lu Zhang and second grandpa and the others were also surprised. They all fell into a state of absent-mindedness. After a short while, the state preceptor and Zhuge Mingyang were the first to recover, and immediately raised their eyebrows without leaving a trace. It seemed that they were very dissatisfied with the Hong Emperor's move. This damned old thing, can't he be idle? You want to run over and get involved? Lu Zhang also recovered, his eyes full of anger. Second grandpa sighed and said, "After all, the Hong Emperor is a person of the great Qin. It's normal for him to make a move." Lu Zhang raised his eyebrows, looked at second grandpa and the other two, and asked suspiciously, "Why aren't you surprised at all? There are two Hong Emperors?" "What's there to be surprised about? We already knew that he had inner demons," second grandpa said. "You already knew?" Lu Zhang was slightly stunned and said with a pout, "You all really hide your strength." Third grandpa said in a deep voice, "Compared to this, Feiyong's situation is the most important." "That's right. Inner demons Hong Emperor can also exert the strength of a war god, and Feiyong is only a false god. Facing his sneak attack, I'm afraid," fourth grandpa murmured, his face full of worry. Lu Zhang sneered secretly. So what if it was a sneak attack? One had to know that Qin Feiyong's body was also a real war god's body. Although he suppressed his cultivation, the strength of his body did not change at all. Moreover, Qin Feiyong, who had once eaten divine flesh, had a body that was even more tenacious and strong than the other war gods. So, Inner Demons Hong Emperor's sneak attack could not shatter Qin Feiyong's qi at all. Of course, if Inner Demons Hong Emperor used a divine weapon or a divine art, it would be a different story. After all, no matter how strong the body was, it would be difficult to block the sharpness of the divine weapon. However, just now, Inner Demons Hong Emperor did not use these methods, so Lu Zhang was not worried at all. But the others did not know that Qin Feiyong had already stepped into the war god. Everyone thought Inner Demons Hong Emperor's attack was enough to kill him. Even if he was lucky and did not die, he would definitely be seriously injured. Even Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor thought so. However, in Lu Zhang's heart, there was also a doubt. Logically speaking, with Qin Feiyong's cautious personality, it was impossible for him not to notice the Inner Demons Hong Emperor's sneak attack. But why did the Inner Demons Hong Emperor's sneak attack succeed? Could it be this little cousin was distracted? How could there be two Emperor Hong? What's going on? Although second grandpa and the others knew that Emperor Hong had inner demons, there were still many people present who did not know about this matter. Because the inner demons had always been Emperor Hong's secret and his biggest trump card, other than a few people, no one else knew about it. However, at this moment, those who knew about it did not have the mood to explain. They all lowered their heads and stared at the place where Qin Feiyong fell. Chapter 1784. Billowing dust and smoke enveloped several miles of land. There was dead silence in the dust and smoke. And they couldn't sense Qin Feiyong's aura either. Why hasn't he come out yet? Could he have died? Everyone was bewildered. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed. He released his divine thought and rushed down. Everything was clear in his eyes. Immediately, a smile appeared on his face. Within the dust cloud, Qin Feiyong was lying in a pit. His entire body was dripping with blood, and there was no sign of life on his body. Obviously, his sea of qi had been destroyed. Woo-woo. Following that, Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand. A gust of wind suddenly blew and the dust quickly dissipated. Qin Feiyong appeared. How could this be? Looking at Qin Feiyong's current situation, Lu Zhang was dumbfounded. How could the mighty body of the war god be crippled so easily? What was this guy doing? Zhuge Mingyang stepped on the edge of the pit and looked down at Qin Feiyong. He chuckled and said, "How does it feel to have your sea of qi destroyed by your great-grandfather?" "It feels good." Qin Feiyong grinned. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth. He got up in a sorry state. "Did I ask you to stand up?" But before he could stabilize his body, Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed fiercely.
His aura surged and oppressed him. Bang! Qin Feiyong fell into a pool of blood again. Are you desperate? Do you want to kill me? But do you have the ability to? Zhuge Mingyang's face was full of ridicule. I was too impulsive. I should have waited for Old Man Qin and the others to come. Qin Feiyong didn't pay attention to him and sighed to himself. Don't be naive. Even if Old Man Qin and the others come, you will still die. Zhuge Mingyang sneered. Is that so? Qin Feiyong looked at him coldly. Zhuge Mingyang said, Now answer me. How did you enter the imperial capital? Space-time gate. Qin Feiyong said. What? The space-time gate is in your hands. Zhuge Mingyang was bewildered. You're thinking too much. The gate of time and space has always been in the hands of the snow python. My gate of time and space is just a replica. Qin Feiyong said. So it's the space-time gate that you snatched from Mu Qing. You really scared me. Zhuge Mingyang laughed. As long as he understood this point, he didn't have to worry about anything else. This was because even if Old Man Qin and the others defeated Mu Tianyang, they wouldn't be able to rush back to the imperial capital to help. That was to say, Qin Feiyong was now all alone. Whoosh! The imperial preceptor teleported and landed beside Zhuge Mingyang. He said in a low voice, Mingyang, he has Xuesong's help. Take advantage of this opportunity to quickly get rid of him. No hurry. He's just a pseudo-god. Even if he recovers his Sea of Qi, what can he do? Zhuge Mingyang said disdainfully. The imperial preceptor frowned and said, But don't forget, back then at the divine site. Ancestor, I didn't forget that he once defeated the god of war of the main tower. But I'm not comparable to those people. Zhuge Mingyang laughed proudly. You can't be careless. Because he's Qin Feiyong. As long as you give him a chance, there will be endless possibilities. The imperial preceptor advised earnestly. Zhuge Mingyang pondered for a while and nodded. All right, I'll do as you said. That's right. You have to get rid of the enemy immediately. You can't give them any chance to fight back. The imperial preceptor smiled with relief. In the past, he was worried that when Zhuge Mingyang became stronger, he might not even take his ancestor seriously. But now that he saw it, he heaved a sigh of relief. Because at least Zhuge Mingyang still listened to him. Zhuge Mingyang looked at Qin Feiyong and said with a smile, I originally wanted to torture you, but there's no other way. Ancestor is impatient, so I can only send you on your way in advance. Death, I'm not afraid. But I'm unwilling. Qin Feiyong said. Zhuge Mingyang said, I'm stronger than you in every aspect. It's natural for you to be defeated by me. What's there to be unwilling about? Qin Feiyong snorted and said, Don't think too highly of yourself. The unwillingness I said has nothing to do with you. Then what is it? Zhuge Mingyang was curious. Qin Feiyong clenched his hands tightly and roared, Until death, no one told me the truth. How can I be willing? So it's because of this. I know the truth, but I just don't want to tell you. I want you to die with grievances. Zhuge Mingyang joked. Qin Feiyong closed his eyes in pain. The truth, Lu Zheng murmured. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Right. That was the truth. Everything Qin Feiyong did was for the sake of finding out the truth about how the emperor had harmed him back then. In other words, this was a ruse to gain the enemy's confidence. Boy, you're insidious. If I'm not wrong, his ocean of qi is not really broken. Lu Zheng murmured. Once he figured this out, he heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was looking forward to the truth. He glanced at Second Grandpa and the other two. Things had come to this point. Were these three old men still going to hide it? The state preceptor shouted, Mingyang, he must be stalling for time. Do it quickly. Okay. Zhuge Mingyang nodded, raised his arm, stretched out his index finger, and the fake god surged at his fingertip. From now on, your name Qin Feiyong will become history. And I, Zhuge Mingyang, will be famous all over the world and be worshipped by the world. This is fate. You should be prepared. Zhuge Mingyang laughed, and divine power gushed out from his fingertip, and swept toward Qin Feiyong's forehead. Qin Feiyong was incomparably furious. Why was no one speaking up until now? What was the truth? but just as he was about to fight back, a figure flashed through the air like lightning and landed in front of him. Qin Feiyong was slightly stunned and immediately looked up. When he saw the back of the figure, his eyes suddenly trembled. How could it be him? Why did this person save him? Qin Feiyong's head was buzzing, and his face was full of disbelief. At the same time, Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor were also stunned. But then, their eyes were filled with ferocious light. Whoosh! The grayish-white divine power was like an indestructible arrow as it entered the sea of energy of the person in front of Qin Feiyong. The qi vessel was shattered. A bloody hole the size of a fist appeared, and blood was flowing out. However, the person did not move, like a mountain, protecting Qin Feiyong. Why is it him? Lu Zheng was also in disbelief. Moreover, in the distance the Kirin army Wu Ho, and the law enforcers, as well as the three of them, all looked at the person in shock. What the hell was going on? Didn't he hate Qin Feiyong? Didn't he fight to the death just now? Why did he step forward at this moment, stand in front of Qin Feiyong and protect him even at the cost of his life? What are you doing? Zhuge Mingyang looked at the person with a gloomy face and shouted, "Back off!" The person shook his head. "You're courting death." Zhuge Mingyang was furious and raised his hand to hit the person's head. Alas! However, at this moment, with a long sigh, another figure appeared in front of Qin Feiyong and grabbed Zhuge Mingyang's wrist. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes were full of killing intent. Why on earth? In the past, you tried to kill me, but now you're standing in front of me to protect me, Qin Feiyong murmured. Looking at the two figures in front of him, he really could not believe it. Because he had never thought or hoped that there would be a day when he would be protected by these two people. Grandpas, can you tell me why this is? Lu Zhang retracted his gaze and turned to look at second grandpa and the other two. But the three of them ignored him and looked at the two people in front of Qin Feiyong with complicated eyes. The scene fell into a dead silence, and the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Why on earth is this? Hurry up and tell me. Qin Feiyong suddenly roared, breaking the silence. Because the people in front of him, protecting him, were Emperor Hong and the Emperor. Emperor Hong grabbed Zhuge Mingyang's arm and asked without turning his head, "Do you really want to know the truth?" "I want to know even in my dreams." Qin Feiyong nodded. Emperor Hong said, "Then are you mentally prepared?" Qin Feiyong said word by word, "I was already prepared when I was in Iron Ox Town." "Very good." Emperor Hong nodded his head and smiled, then looked at Zhuge Mingyang and said, "Now that the demon ancestor's divine body has escaped, whether it is me, the Emperor, or Qin Feiyong, we should all be the targets you want to eliminate." Zhuge Mingyang's arm shook, shaking off Emperor Hong's big hand. Then, he rubbed his aching wrist and smiled. "You've already thought of this, as expected of the son of the Qin Emperor." "That's right, once we get rid of the Lu family, none of you descendants of Qin Batian will be able to live. Great Qin will belong to my Zhuge family. And my ancestor, who is also the current imperial preceptor, will become the first imperial emperor of my Zhuge empire." Zhuge Mingyang laughed. The imperial preceptor's expression changed, and he shouted, "Mingyang! Ancestor, at this point, do you still have anything to worry about? Qin Feiyong's cultivation has been crippled, a mere Emperor Hong. Even if the Lu family's fourth grandpa is added, what can they do to us? I alone am enough to take care of them." Zhuge Mingyang's face was full of contempt. The imperial preceptor pondered for a moment, then smiled and nodded. "That's true." "What?" "What Qin Feiyong said is true. The imperial preceptor wants to usurp the throne." The three of them trembled both physically and mentally. They never thought that the imperial preceptor they had always respected would have such wild ambitions. Swish! The three of them hurriedly rushed to Emperor Hong's side. While protecting Qin Feiyong, they glared at the imperial preceptor and Zhuge Mingyang. "You three ants dare to stand in front of me?" Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. 3 strands of divine power swept out, directly shattering the three people's sea of qi. "Zhuge Mingyang, what are you doing? Usurping the throne is a great crime, do you know that?" The Marquis and Kirin army in the distance roared angrily. As early as when the little prince inherited the throne, Qin Feiyong had already destroyed my Zhuge family. What is there to be afraid of? Zhuge Mingyang laughed angrily. "You deserve it." Someone roared. Deserve it? From ancient times until now, the world has always been occupied by the capable. My Xueqi family is glorious and has replaced the Qin clan to control the world. What's wrong with that? Xueqi Mingyang shouted. Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1785. Twisting words and forcing logic. No matter what you say, it will not change the fact that your Xueqi family is disloyal and unjust. Qin Shang and the other two roared. The winner is the king, the loser is the bandit. As long as my Xueqi family rules the world, who would dare to say anything? Moreover, behind our Xueqi family, there is the terrifying devil ancestor. The imperial advisor's face was full of disdain. Bastard, you will suffer retribution. Qin Sheng roared. He turned to look at Qin Feiyang, his face full of guilt, and said, I'm sorry, we wronged you if I had believed you earlier. Even if you believe me, it's useless, because the difference in strength is too great. But that's not important. Now, I just want to know the truth. Qin Feiyang said gloomily, looking at the back of the Emperor and Emperor Hong, he said, Quickly tell me, what is the truth? Emperor Hong sighed. The truth is something you will never be able to imagine. Qin Feiyang said angrily, Don't talk nonsense, okay? Emperor Hong said, This old man wants to tell you, but it depends on whether Xueqi Mingyang will give this old man the chance. Facing Xueqi Mingyang, he had no confidence at all. Xueqi Mingyang's eyes flickered and suddenly laughed. All right, I'll give you some time to tell Qin Feiyang the truth, because I also want to see, after knowing the truth, will he feel guilty and blame himself for everything he did in the past? The imperial advisor said angrily, Mingyang, don't give them time. Shut up. Qin Feiyang roared. He stood up and stared at the imperial advisor like a mad beast, and said, Whoever dares to stop Emperor Hong from telling the truth, I will let him die. You still dare to be arrogant? The imperial advisor's face was incomparably gloomy. Xueqi Mingyang laughed. Ancestor, don't be angry, let them speak anyway, I don't care about this bit of time. The imperial advisor said angrily, Mingyang, you are too indecisive, it will be difficult for you to become a great person like this. Enough. Xueqi Mingyang suddenly shouted, his face full of frost. The imperial preceptor's eyes trembled. Xueqi Mingyang turned to stare at the state master and sneered, I've tolerated you for a long time. Don't challenge my patience anymore. Otherwise, I won't let you off even if it's you. The imperial preceptor's face paled. How dare he speak to him in such a tone? Emperor Hong sneered. Did you see that? This is the person you nurtured. Are you angry in your heart? The imperial preceptor's face sank. Although he is your descendant, you don't seem to know him well. He's a much more ambitious man than you. Do you really think that he will let you sit on the throne after you have usurped the throne? Don't be naive. From the beginning to the end, there was only himself in his eyes. Hong Emperor sneered. Xueqi Mingyang raised his eyebrows. The imperial advisor glanced at Xueqi Mingyang, then coldly looked at Emperor Hong and said, Are you trying to sow discord? This is already the truth in front of us. Is there a need to sow discord? You just don't want to admit it. After all, he was nurtured by you. You have high hopes for him. Emperor Hong said. The imperial preceptor clenched his fists. You talk too much. Are you going to say it or not? If you don't, I'll send you on your way. Xueqi Mingyang said impatiently. Emperor Hong took a deep breath, turned to look at Qin Feiyang and sighed. This matter, we have to start from when the demon ancestor was sealed. Qin Feiyang said, I already know about the demon ancestor being sealed. There's no need to say any more. Emperor Hong glanced at him and said, Then let's talk about it after the seal. After the demon ancestor was sealed, the demon dragon once again set off a reign of terror. In the end, he was also killed by father. The demon ancestor and the demon dragon were killed one after another, and the great Qin Empire was established. This continent finally slowly calmed down. My great Qin also walked towards glory step by step. But just before your father succeeded the throne, Xueqi Xinyun suddenly entered the imperial palace, found us, and directly revealed his identity. At that time, we were very surprised and prepared to take him down immediately. But at that moment, the demon ancestor's divine sense appeared. At that time, we wanted to capture both Zhuge Shenyun and the demon ancestor's divine sense in one fell swoop. Because at that time, the demon ancestor had not fully recovered his divine sense. However, what we didn't expect was that although the demon ancestor and the demon dragon were killed back then, the demon ancestor still had a group of powerful subordinates. There were even divine beasts. Emperor Hong said. So you compromised? Qin Feiyang asked. Zhuge Shenyun was the imperial preceptor. That's right. We had to compromise. Otherwise, the great Qin would have been finished long ago. Emperor Hong sighed. Since the demon ancestor still had such terrifying subordinates, why didn't he just kill you directly? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Because of the seal. If he wants to take back the divine body, he must have the people of the Qin clan to remove the seal. Emperor Hong said. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. But at that time, although there were countless descendants of the great Qin, no one could achieve ancestral awakening. And father, there was no news, so the demon ancestor could only wait. So, he let Zhuge Shenyun, as the imperial preceptor, lurk in the imperial palace and monitor the descendants of the Qin clan. Until one day, when Emperor Hong said until here, his expression became agitated all at once. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Emperor Hong looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Your birth. My birth? Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes. You still don't know when you were born, there was a strange phenomenon in the sky. Night turned into day, divine light filled the sky, and auspicious beasts flew. Emperor Hong said. What? Qin Feiyang was surprised. There was such a thing? Such a big thing, how come we didn't know? The three of them looked at Emperor Hong suspiciously. Emperor Hong looked at the three and said, Have you forgotten? Qin Feiyang was born in the Liu family. Yes. The three slapped their heads and said, When the Empress was about to give birth, you sent her to the Liu family. Yes. We did this in order to hide it from Zhuge Shenyun. So, only we and the Liu family know about this. Emperor Hong said. Qin Feiyang looked at second grandpa and the other two. The three of them nodded. However, Zhuge Shenyun is not so easy to fool. He followed us and witnessed the entire process of Qin Feiyang's birth. Emperor Hong sighed. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, Why was there a strange phenomenon when I was born? We don't know. In short, that phenomenon was even more spectacular than becoming a god. The most magical thing was that after you were born, Shui and the castle fell from the sky, floating beside you like your guardians. Emperor Hong said. What? Shui and the castle fell from the sky. Qin Feiyang was surprised. That's right. Until now, we still haven't figured out who made these two divine artifacts. And why did they descend when you were born? However, from the aura emitted by the two divine artifacts, we could tell that they were definitely not ordinary divine artifacts. Emperor Hong said. Descending from the sky. Qin Feiyang raised his head to look at the sky. Isn't this a little too strange? Watching your birth, whether it was your parents, your grandfather and I, we were all very happy. Because the two divine artifacts were born together, this was already destined. Your life will definitely be extraordinary. However, it was also because of the appearance of these two divine artifacts that brought you disaster. Emperor Hong sighed. Qin Feiyang asked, The imperial preceptor wants to take away these two divine artifacts? That's right. And he also predicted that you would definitely be extraordinary in the future. Even bloodline might revert to its ancestor. So, he went back to report this matter to the demon ancestor. After the demon ancestor learned about it, he was overjoyed and came in person, asking us to hand you over to him. But how could we agree? Your father and mother also begged bitterly. Because once you are handed over to him, you will become a puppet in his hands. Emperor Hong said angrily. Is that so? Qin Feiyang turned to look at the emperor. The emperor closed his eyes, his face full of pain. After a long time, he opened his eyes and nodded. Qin Feiyang fell silent. But the hands hidden in the sleeves were already dripping blood. His nails cut through the skin and drilled into the flesh. When you were born, the demon ancestor had already condensed a complete divine soul. His strength was quite terrifying.
Seeing that we protected you and didn't hand you over to him, he was furious and wanted to snatch you away. But just as we were in despair, Xueqi and the castle revived to protect you. With the 2 divine artifacts revived, even the demon ancestor couldn't get close.
In the end, the demon ancestor flew into a rage out of humiliation and captured your grandfather and your grandfather to use as a bargaining chip to threaten us.
Emperor Hong said. Grandfather? Qin Feiyong was stunned. That's right.
Have you never thought about where your grandfather is?
Emperor Hong asked. When I was young, my mother said that my grandfather was already dead. Qin Feiyong said. That was a lie. At that time, the demon ancestor used your grandfather and your grandfather's lives to threaten us, to break the castle and Xueqi's defense. But how could we have the ability?
In the end, the demon ancestor had no choice but to give up.
However, he captured your grandfather and your grandfather. And regarding this matter, we couldn't explain it to the outside world, because it was a shame for our great Qin, so we could only lie that your grandfather had already passed away. As for your grandfather, very few people knew about the existence of the Lu family, so there was no need to explain. Emperor Hong said.
Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice.
In other words, my grandfather and grandfather are now in the hands of the demon ancestor? That's right. Emperor Hong nodded.
Qin Feiyong looked at Zhuge Mingyang and the imperial preceptor. The murderous intent in his eyes was undisguised. After the demon ancestor left, we also brought you back to the imperial palace, and the imperial preceptor was ordered to keep an eye on you.
As long as there was a chance, he would think of a way to capture you. I'm afraid you don't know that in the 10 years you lived in the imperial palace, the imperial preceptor attacked you no less than 100 times. In order to prevent the imperial preceptor from harming you, your father and mother didn't dare to relax for a moment. In those 10 years, every day was like a year for them. However, every time the imperial preceptor attacked, Xueqi and the castle would appear to protect you, allowing you to spend a peaceful childhood. Emperor Hong said with a smile. Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1786. Hee. However, hearing Emperor Hong's words, Qin Feiyong couldn't be happy at all. Instead, he felt that it was a sad thing. Everyone had a childhood. Other people's childhood was full of joy and carefree. But what about him? Even his childhood had to be protected by the ancient castle and pale snow in order to pass peacefully. This even implicated his parents, who were anxious and worried about him all day long. Wasn't that sad? It was only now that he knew that his father and mother had silently sacrificed so much for him. Qin Feiyong said, since everything had calmed down, why did it change again in my 10th year? Because at that time, your bloodline power had already shown signs of atavism. Emperor Hong said. What? Qin Feiyong's body shook. At that time, his bloodline power had already begun to atavism? But at that time, it wasn't obvious. Even you didn't notice it, but your parents and the imperial preceptor all noticed it. At that time, we were both happy and worried. I am happy that finally, a person with atavistic bloodline has appeared in my Qin clan.
Worried that the demon ancestor would definitely not let you go.
The result was as we expected. The demon ancestor came again.
At first, we weren't too worried.
After all, there was still Xueqi and the castle. But when the demon ancestor made a move, we found that the castle and Xueqi were no longer protecting you.
We were scared out of our wits.
The demon ancestor was naturally pleasantly surprised. He was ready to take you away.
In the end, under our pleas, he agreed to give us 3 more days to meet. In these 3 days, he won't disturb us. But once the 3 days are up, we have to hand you over to him.
In desperation, we could only agree first. After the demon ancestor left, your parents and I came to the Lu family to find your 3 grandfathers to discuss this matter. In the end, we made a painful decision. I'll cripple your cultivation. Make you unable to cultivate for the rest of your life. Emperor Hong said. Boom. Qin Feiyong's head rumbled. So this was the reason why his cultivation was crippled. That's because only by crippling your cultivation will your bloodline power stop atavism. Only by doing so can we break the fiend ancestor's hope. Emperor Hong sighed. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyong murmured. As for this matter, I truly couldn't bring myself to do it. Your 3 grandfathers also couldn't bring themselves to do it. Naturally, there's no need to mention your mother. When she made this decision, her face was already covered in tears.
In the end, your father stood up.
He knew that if he did this, you would be with him for the rest of your life, but he didn't hesitate. When your father returned to the imperial palace and made his move, your mother went back on her word and begged him to change his mind, but he didn't.
After crippling your cultivation, he hardened his heart and immediately expelled you from the imperial capital.
Because he knew that the ancestor devil would not give up just by crippling your cultivation. Because the marrow cleansing pill is not that rare. So, he expelled you to the spiritual state. And he also ordered the spiritual state's mansion master at that time, Old Master Ren, not to let anyone give you the marrow cleansing pill. And not to let anyone know that you are in the spiritual state. Emperor Hong said. Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled and said, Old Master Ren also knows my identity? That's right. Not only him, the previous mansion master Zhu Yu also knows your identity. Emperor Hong said. So I was the only one who was kept in the dark. Qin Feiyong laughed self-deprecatingly and said, Now that you mention it, Ma Hongmei of the Iron Ox town was also ordered by you to deliberately not give me the marrow cleansing pill. That's right. But she didn't know your identity. Only Old Master Ran and Zhu Yu in the spiritual state knew. She was just following orders. Emperor Hong said.
Following orders. But do you know?
I treated her as an enemy.
And I killed her with my own hands.
Qin Feiyong roared. We know about her death. But you don't have to feel guilty about her death. Because Old Master Ran has been secretly paying attention to you and everyone in the Iron Ox town.
This person is narrow-minded.
Back then, she bribed the people of the Black Demon stronghold to kill you. And in her opinion, since the higher-ups ordered not to give you the marrow cleansing pill, then you must be the enemy of the pill pagoda. So she didn't put you in her eyes. Emperor Hong said. Has been secretly paying attention to me. Qin Feiyong murmured. Yes. Now do you understand? Your father did this to protect you. Emperor Hong sighed. Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled and looked at the emperor again. The hatred in his heart suddenly disappeared and was replaced by guilt and self-blame. Everything his father did was to protect him. But what about him? He treated his father as a life and death enemy. He even repeatedly humiliated his father in front of everyone. The more he thought about it, the more he hated himself. Why was he so stupid? Slap. Suddenly.
He slapped himself hard on the face and roared, Unfaithful and unfilial, you are even worse than a beast.
He was scolding himself. Tianer? The emperor turned his head to look at him, tears already streaming down his face. The indifference of the past also disappeared. The long-lost doting, kindness, and fatherly love appeared. Plop. Looking at the emperor's eyes and face at this moment, Qin Feiyong's heart trembled and directly knelt on the ground, saying, Father, I'm sorry, I'm insensible, I deserve to die, hit me, scold me. No. I've never blamed you. I only blame myself. Why am I so incompetent that I can't even protect my own child? In fact, every time I see you, I want to get together with you, or even look at you a few more times. But because of my cowardice, my incompetence, I don't dare. The emperor closed his eyes and said in pain. Father, Qin Feiyong murmured, wishing he could immediately crawl into his father's arms. Alas! The world is really unpredictable. Lu Zhang heaved a deep sigh. He never thought that the truth would be like this.
Compared to now, this little cousin must be very sad in his heart.
That was true. If it were him, he would also hate himself. Okay. It's just a small matter. Is there a need to be so pretentious? Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand impatiently. Bastard! Look at them. Are they putting on an act? Lu Zhang was annoyed and said angrily. Come out and be arrogant if you have the ability. Zhuge Mingyang glanced at Lu Zhang and said contemptuously. Lu Zhang said disdainfully, I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with a scumbag who doesn't even care about his ancestors. Zhuge Mingyang narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile, You can only hide in that boundary and be arrogant, but it doesn't matter anyway, you can't be arrogant for long. Then we'll see. Lu Zhang sneered. The emperor glanced at Zhuge Mingyang, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "Okay, get up quickly. Zhuge Mingyang is right. Now is not the time to be sentimental. After we are out of danger, we father and son will have a good talk."
Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and stood up.
Out of danger? Haha, do you think I will give you this opportunity? Zhuge Mingyang sneered when he heard the emperor's words. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with killing intent.
He looked at Emperor Hong and the emperor and said, "Father, great-grandfather, what about Uncle Yuan?"
Qin Yuan is your grandfather's subordinate, and he is also a fake god. When your grandfather was taken away, he told Qin Yuan to protect you and your mother well. After your cultivation was crippled, your mother couldn't bear to see you wandering outside alone, so she asked Qin Yuan to accompany you. And Qin Yuan didn't let your mother down. He took you to Iron Ox Town, hidden in the mountains. Emperor Hong said. So he is grandfather's subordinate, Qin Feiyang suddenly realized. Emperor Hong smiled and said, although he is grandfather's subordinate, they are as close as brothers. However, there is one thing that we can't figure out. What is it? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Emperor Hong frowned and said, back then, your mother told him not to give you the marrow cleansing pill, but why didn't he do so? I've been wondering that too. Emperor said. Qin Feiyang asked, Uncle Yuan didn't tell you? No. Since you can cultivate, we haven't seen him. However, your mother seems to have seen him, but did Qin Yuan say anything to her? We don't know. Emperor Hong said. Qin Feiyang said, then do you know that Uncle Yuan has a divine pill? What? Divine pill? Emperor Hong and the emperor looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor also had a look of disbelief. This was the first time they had heard of it. Qin Feiyang furrowed his brows as he looked at their reactions. Before, he didn't know Uncle Yuan's cultivation, so he didn't think too carefully. And now, when he learned that Uncle Yuan was a pseudo-god, the problem came. How could a pseudo-god have a divine pill? What secrets were hidden in this? In short, he felt that Uncle Yuan was becoming more and more mysterious. Was this old man who had always accompanied him as he grew up really just a subordinate by his grandfather's side? He couldn't figure it out. Qin Feiyang shook his head and temporarily suppressed the doubts in his heart. He looked at Emperor Hong and the emperor and said, then after I was expelled from the imperial capital, what was Demon Ancestor's reaction? He must be very angry. And the first thing he did was to send the state preceptor to investigate your whereabouts. The state preceptor also entered the spirit state to investigate and interrogate Old Man Ran and Zhu Yu. But no matter how the state preceptor interrogated, they lied that no one entered the spirit state. With Qin Yuan's help, the matter of you hiding in the spirit state was concealed. But Demon Ancestor didn't give up. He has been waiting silently, waiting for you to appear. Moreover, he has been holding on to your grandfather and your grandfather. But there's nothing we can do about this. We can only calm down and cultivate in order to break through to the War God realm as soon as possible so that we can rescue them. But, when the emperor said this, his expression became complicated. But what? Qin Feiyang was curious. Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1787. The emperor said, we didn't expect that Qin Yuan would give you the marrow cleansing pill and rise crazily. Yes. When we heard Old Man Ren talk about this, we were very worried. Because sooner or later, you will enter the imperial capital. Emperor Hong also sighed. That's for sure. Qin Feiyang smiled. Back then, after taking the marrow cleansing pill, he only had one goal, to return to the imperial capital. As expected, in a few years you came to the imperial capital. We have been paying attention to you and knew your identity at that time, but the imperial tutor didn't know at first. Because you changed your name. However, when you caused a ruckus in Bright Heaven Palace, your identity was exposed. The imperial tutor immediately began to pay attention to you. At that time, I wanted to cripple your cultivation again, but the imperial tutor used the lives of your grandfather and grandfather to threaten me. If they dared to do this again, I would immediately kill them. And immediately destroy the great Qin Empire, exterminating my Qin clan. So I had no choice but to endure. The emperor said. Qin Feiyong smiled helplessly and said, "Fortunately, you didn't do that, or I would hate you even more."
Yes. At first I was quite anxious.
But later, I found that the demon ancestor didn't make a move on you.
This surprised me.
Later, the imperial tutor told me that the demon ancestor changed his mind and no longer forcibly kidnapped you, allowing you to grow freely. Of course, as a condition, we are not allowed to think of ways to cripple your cultivation. I discussed it with your grandfather, and this is good. As long as you don't fall into the hands of the demon ancestor and become his puppet, there might be a turning point in the future. So from then on, we didn't care about you anymore. However, although your strength became stronger and stronger, the turning point we hoped for did not appear. Your bloodline power has successfully returned to its ancestral state and entered the divine sight to unlock the seal, allowing the demon ancestor's divine body to escape.
The emperor shook his head, his face full of worry.
The same was true for Emperor Hong. The subordinates of the demon ancestor were enough to make people despair. Now that the demon ancestor had seized the divine body, after he fused with the divine body and returned to his peak state, the great Qin Empire would be completely hopeless.
Is there a turnaround?
Qin Feiyong murmured. In fact, the turning point had already appeared. It was just that his father and great-grandfather hadn't noticed it yet. And this turning point was his cultivation. After breaking through to the war god level, he could easily take care of Zhuge Mingyang and the others, let alone the demon ancestor. Qin Feiyong looked at Emperor Hong and said, "Since you are so afraid of the devil ancestor, then why are you still desperately helping Zhuge Mingyang and the imperial preceptor snatch the devil ancestor's divine body in the divine ruins? The fiend ancestor is threatening me with the lives of so many people. Do I dare not do it?" However, later on, I also decided to cut off all means of retreat.
Emperor Hong said, "Burn all bridges?"
Qin Feiyong was stunned.
Yes.
After Zhuge Mingyang took back the divine body, I wanted to find a chance to destroy the demon alpha's divine body. I was also afraid that my strength wasn't enough, so I asked you for the heavenly great sword. But Zhuge Mingyang seemed to have sensed my thoughts and kept the demon ancestor's divine body in another space inside the spatial divine object. I couldn't find a chance at all. Emperor Hong said regretfully. "Sure enough, there's more than one space," Qin Feiyong muttered. When he heard Zhao Tailai's words, he suspected that the spatial divine object was the same as Mu Tianyang's spatial divine object. There was more than one space.
What about Mother?
Qin Feiyong looked at the emperor and asked. The emperor sighed. "Your mother is the person I owe the most in my life." Qin Feiyong asked, "You abolished her position as empress and imprisoned her. It should be the imperial preceptor's idea, right?"
"No. This matter has nothing to do with the imperial preceptor.
It was my idea." The emperor shook his head. "Your idea?" Qin Feiyong frowned.
"Yes.
Although your mother is gentle and kind in front of you, her temper is actually the same as yours. Back then, after you were banished to the spiritual state, she immediately began to secretly investigate the whereabouts of the demon ancestor. After I learned of this, I was afraid that something would happen to her, so I put her under house arrest. At first, she didn't have any complaints, but as time passed, she began to blame me. Especially when you returned to the imperial capital. Her resentment towards me grew deeper and deeper. Of course, I didn't blame her. After all, it was my incompetence that caused you to fall to this point. In the end, I had no choice but to abolish her position as empress and imprison her. However, I didn't expect that you would actually bring a group of forgotten continents' fake gods back. The emperor smiled bitterly. Qin Feiyong asked, "Then do you know where Mother is now?" "I don't know. To be honest, your mother's temper is really too fierce." "Do you still remember the agreement you forced me to sign?" The emperor said. "Of course I remember. Within 10 years, you are not allowed to hurt my mother or anyone related to me." Qin Feiyong said.
"Yes.
That's the agreement. Actually, this agreement is exactly what I want. Because I don't want to hurt your people anymore, and I don't want to imprison your mother again and let her continue to suffer." At that time, I also thought that after suffering so much in the divine prison, your mother would stop. But that's not the case at all. She was still secretly investigating the hiding place of the demon ancestor. Then one day,
The imperial tutor finally found out that your mother was investigating the whereabouts of the demon ancestor. In a rage, he kidnapped your mother. At that time I was really going crazy. But fortunately, you brought people back and found your mother. The emperor smiled. Qin Feiyong frowned and said, "So, it's very likely that mother is still investigating the demon ancestor's lair?" "It's not likely, it's certain," the emperor said. "Mother," Qin Feiyong murmured. At that time in the Sea of Reincarnation, he couldn't figure out why his mother left silently after escaping. It turned out that his mother had been secretly investigating the whereabouts of the demon ancestor. And at that time, his mother must have already found some clues, but because she was afraid of implicating him, she didn't tell him. This was a mother's love. It was higher than the sky, thicker than the earth, and bigger than the sea. In comparison, his father, Qin Feiyong, looked at the emperor. Compared to his mother, he did seem a little. But then, he shook his head again and erased the thoughts in his mind. What was he thinking? His father had enough headaches over the years. And as the emperor of a country, he had to consider far more things than his mother, so naturally, he would be especially cautious. The emperor sighed and said, "Feiyong, you shouldn't have killed the commander of the Kirin army. After all, he was forced to save Zhuge Shenfeng." "Who told you to hide it from me?" Qin Feiyong pursed his lips. Now that he had killed him, what else could he do? Wait. The corpse of the commander of the Kirin army was still there. If he opened the gate of rebirth again in the future, wouldn't he be able to resurrect the commander of the Kirin army? Thinking of this, Qin Feiyong said telepathically, "Father, find a chance later to put away the corpse of the commander of the Kirin army." "Why?" The emperor thought to himself. Qin Feiyong said, "In the future, I may be able to resurrect him." "Really?" The emperor was surprised. "Yes." Qin Feiyong responded secretly, but he didn't say the price of resurrection. Of course. It was impossible for him to open the gate of rebirth again just for the commander of the Kirin army, because even he couldn't bear the price. "Okay." The emperor thought to himself. "Wait. This child seemed to be telepathically communicating?" The emperor was stunned and secretly said, "Feiyong, your Sea of Qi. My Sea of Qi has never been broken. I did this to force you to tell the truth." Qin Feiyong said telepathically. "It's not broken," the emperor muttered in his heart and said helplessly, "You little brat, you're really weird." "But you're right. Before you have enough strength, we will never tell you the truth. Because we all know your character. Once you know the truth, you will definitely look for the demon ancestor regardless of the consequences. At that time you will die." The emperor thought to himself. Qin Feiyong said telepathically, "Even if you don't tell me, I will still look for the demon ancestor. The result will be the same." "Feiyong, the demon ancestor's strength isn't as simple as you think. Not to mention that you're only a pseudo-god now. Even if you break through to War God, you won't be able to defeat him easily. Don't be impulsive." The emperor hurriedly said, "Father, I'm not joking. I should know the demon ancestor's strength better than you." Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. The emperor said, "Then you. Maybe I'm not a match for the demon ancestor, but I won't let him have an easy time." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with killing intent. He looked at Emperor Hong and the emperor and said, "Last question. When I was young, Chang Xue and the castle saved me many times, but why don't I have any impression of it?" "Because Chang Xue and the castle have always been guarded by your mother and me. Every time the imperial tutor came to ambush you, they only released a wisp of aura to intimidate the imperial tutor. And when you were 10 years old, the demon ancestor appeared, but he didn't directly look for you. Instead, he looked for me first. In the past, the demon ancestor came a few times. Every time he came, the castle would immediately react. But that time, the castle was indifferent. In the end, the demon ancestor tried to kill me, but the castle didn't move at all. So we judged that the castle and Chang Xue were no longer protecting you." The emperor said. "So that's how it is. But you guys are too arbitrary. You should have waited for the demon ancestor to come and kill me. If at that time, the castle and Chang Xue still didn't react, then you can truly judge that they are no longer protecting me." Qin Feiyong was speechless. "It's easy to say. In those 10 years, in order to protect you, their minds were on the verge of collapse. Whenever there was a wind blowing, their nerves would tense up. Not to mention that the demon ancestor personally came. How could they think so much? Moreover, there was a reaction in the past, but suddenly there was no reaction. There must be a reason for this. Emperor Hong rolled his eyes at Qin Feiyong and said. Qin Feiyong smiled bitterly. Your father's judgment at that time was not wrong, because that time, Chang Shui and the castle did not intend to help you. But suddenly, that mysterious voice sounded in Qin Feiyong's mind again. Qin Feiyong was stunned and secretly said, Shadowless man, you are really everywhere. What's wrong? Are you starting to dislike me? The mysterious voice said. No, no, no. You are so resourceful, how could I dislike you? However, tell me, why didn't Chang Shui and the castle help me that time? Qin Feiyong said in his mind. Then answer me first. If you are allowed to live a stable and worry-free life in the imperial capital, do you have the confidence to surpass your current achievements? The mysterious voice said. No. Living too comfortably will make people lazy. Qin Feiyong replied without hesitation. That's not right. If you are in the imperial capital, that is equivalent to always being under the wings of your parents. How could you grow so quickly? Believe it or not, if you had stayed in the imperial capital and faced the fiend ancestor and the others, you would be like a helpless child, hiding behind everyone and crying in despair. You wouldn't be standing here and protecting everyone like you are now. As for the rewards, it's proportional to the effort. The shadowless man laughed. Qin Feiyong said, So that's how it is. This is the training for me, right? Jade can't be made into anything without being carved. It's the same for people. No matter how talented a person is, it's difficult for him to become a great person without being honed. The shadowless man said. This sentence is very reasonable. Thank you, shadowless man, Qin Feiyong secretly said. The shadowless man said, Go, your mission has just begun. Don't, I will disappoint you. Qin Feiyong secretly said. He raised his head and looked at Zhuge Mingyang. He grinned and said, I've made you wait for a long time. Genius remembered the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 1788. It's fine, it's fine. After all, I didn't wait in vain. I enjoyed a good show. Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand. A good show, Qin Feiyong murmured. Yes. Just now, when you knelt there, that look of pain and self-blame, it made people feel so comfortable and happy. Zhuge Mingyang laughed. That's true. A person like you can only find a little sense of superiority in this kind of situation. Qin Feiyong said. A person like me? Zhuge Mingyang was stunned and asked curiously. Then tell me, what kind of person am I? Qin Feiyong said. Do you really want me to say it? Say it. I really want to know, what do you think of me? Monster? Genius? Devil? Zhuge Mingyang looked at him mockingly. So narcissistic? Qin Feiyong was speechless, shook his head and smiled. None of the above, you are most suitable for the role of the clown. The clown? Zhuge Mingyang's face suddenly sank and said with a smile. You really have guts at this point, you still dare to talk nonsense. And then, Qin Feiyong laughed. You already know the truth. It's time to send your family on their way. Zhuge Mingyang glanced at Qin Feiyong, the emperor, and Emperor Hong, his eyes filled with killing intent. Boom. Gray-white divine power rolled out. The void shattered. The earth collapsed. Emperor Hong shouted, Feiyong, quickly take your father and Qin Sheng away. I will hold him back. Can you hold him back? The imperial preceptor sneered. Don't forget that there is still me. The inner demon's Emperor Hong took a step forward and landed beside Emperor Hong, staring at the imperial preceptor with a sinister smile. The sneer on the imperial preceptor's face grew thicker. Qin Feiyong looked at Emperor Hong's back and said in a deep voice, You and the inner demons are not their opponents. Now that things have come to this, it doesn't matter whether I live or die. As long as you're alive. Because you are the hope of great Qin. Emperor Hong said in a deep voice. Haha. This sovereign, I didn't think that you would actually be able to say such mushy words. Hearing it gave me goosebumps. Emperor Hong of the inner demons laughed cruelly. Is it mushy? To be honest, I've been holding these words in for a long time. Now that I've finally said them, I feel much better. Emperor Hong laughed. Then let's go all out and fight? Emperor Hong of Inner Demons said. Let's fight. Emperor Hong nodded. Along with a clang, the heavenly great sword appeared, its sharpness tearing the heavens and splitting the earth. Emperor Hong grabbed the heavenly great sword, looked at the imperial preceptor, and shouted, Zhuge Shinyun, settle this. Boom. The inner demon's Emperor Hong's body was also filled with a terrifying baleful aura. The state preceptor also released his aura, not to be outdone. Zhuge Mingyang smiled and said, Ancestor, these trash don't need you to personally take action. Just stand by and watch. The state preceptor said in a deep voice, Don't underestimate them, end the battle quickly. Zhuge Mingyang immediately burned with anger and shouted, I told you to watch, so you watch. What are you stealing the limelight for? Stealing the limelight? The state preceptor looked at Zhuge Mingyang in a daze. Was he stealing the limelight? Facing the enemy, regardless of whether the other party was strong or weak, one should go all out and not give them any chance. Did he not understand this principle? He actually said that he was stealing the limelight, simply unreasonable. Fine, I won't make a move. But you'd better not fail. The state preceptor snorted coldly and retreated to the side, silently looking at Zhuge Mingyang and Emperor Hong, his eyes flickering. Fail. Even if I want to fail, it's impossible, because they are too weak. Zhuge Mingyang muttered. Gray-white divine power like a raging wave, swept through the sky, and pounced towards Emperor Hong. Let's go! Emperor Hong shouted at Qin Feiyong and the others, and then held the heavenly great sword to meet them. But suddenly, a hand reached out and grabbed their arms. Emperor Hong and Inner Demon's Emperor Hong were taken aback. They turned their heads and found that the person who grabbed them was Qin Feiyong. What are you doing? Emperor Hong of Inner Demons raised his eyebrows. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, Fighting with a junior, others will say that you are bullying the weak. Bullying the weak? The two looked at each other and were immediately furious. At this time they still cared about this? Moreover, they might not be able to beat Zhuge Mingyang. Two great-grandfathers, let us juniors settle the grudges of the younger generation ourselves. Qin Feiyong smiled, took a step forward, passed between the two, and stood in front of everyone. And Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor were surprised. He actually dared to stand up? Could it be that his qi had been repaired? But even with the cedar, it was impossible to be so fast. Feiyong, don't be stupid. Emperor Hong's expression changed. The emperor and the other two were also extremely anxious. Qin Feiyong looked at the gray divine power that was surging towards him, and said with a smile, You guys have protected me for so many years, it's time for me to protect you guys. When you become stronger, it won't be too late to protect us. Now back off. Emperor Hong shouted. Qin Feiyong turned a deaf ear, looked at Zhuge Mingyang and said, Let me see how strong you have become after breaking through to the War God realm. Then open your eyes wide and watch. Zhuge Mingyang smiled proudly. I will. Qin Feiyong muttered and raised his arm. Boom. A monstrous aura burst out from his body. The Sea of Qi has really been repaired? The state preceptor's eyes trembled. For some reason, looking at the current Qin Feiyong, a great sense of uneasiness rose in his heart. Are you finally going to be serious? Lu Zhang murmured with a trace of a smile on his face. Zheng, your little cousin is in danger. How can you still be in the mood to smile? Second Grandpa noticed the smile on Lu Zheng's face and immediately said angrily, I'm in a good mood now, of course I have to smile. Lu Zhang gritted his teeth and said, You. Second Grandpa's face was full of anger as he frowned and said, Did you and Feiyong have an argument in the miracle? What do you mean? Lu Zhang was stunned. If that's not the case, then why are you so happy to see Feiyong in trouble? Zheng, no matter what, we and Feiyong are family. And you're his cousin. You brothers have to be united. Second Grandpa tried his best to persuade her. Lu Zhang smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly. Second Grandpa, your imagination is too rich. How could my little cousin and I have an argument? Besides, even if he offended me, I will be magnanimous and not bother with him. He added. Then what are you? Second grandpa was suspicious. Wait and see, you will understand soon. Lu Zheng's eyes flashed. He looked up at Qin Feiyong and murmured, Little cousin, show your strength quickly and let everyone have a good look. Also, let Zhuge Mingyang shut up for me. High in the sky. The gray divine power had already arrived in front of Qin Feiyong. The hearts of Emperor Hong and the others were already in their throats. Although Qin Feiyong had repaired his qi, he was only a false god. How could he be a match for Zhuge Mingyang? Boom! Seeing that Zhuge Mingyang's divine power was about to drown Qin Feiyong grinned, and his aura suddenly soared. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes widened. Emperor Hong and the others, as well as second grandpa and the others, were also bewildered. Boom! Almost in the next moment, Qin Feiyong's aura rose to the war god realm. The three types of divine powers immediately surged out of his palm like a tidal wave. Boom! The two divine powers collided with a loud bang. A deafening explosion sounded between heaven and earth. War god. Feiyong, he is actually a war god. Second grandpa muttered to himself, his old face full of shock. Third grandpa and fourth grandpa were also dumbfounded. It turned out that Feiyong had already stepped into the war god realm. No wonder Lu Zheng, this kid, would laugh. Emperor Hong, the inner demon's Emperor Hong, the emperor, and Qin Shang looked at Qin Feiyong's back and were all dumbstruck. They never thought that Qin Feiyong had already broken through to the war god realm. When they came back to their senses, Emperor Hong and the emperor looked at each other, and a trace of joy appeared on their faces at the same time. This might be the turning point they had been looking forward to. Looking at Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor again. At this moment, they stared at Qin Feiyong. Both their faces and eyes were full of disbelief. War god? No. They must be seeing things. How long had it been since he broke through to the false god realm? How could he step into the war god realm so quickly? You're surprised, right? Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Zhuge Mingyang shook his head and roared. Impossible, absolutely impossible, this must be a dream. I admit, your immortal demon art gives me a headache. However, I'm not a person to be underestimated. Haven't you been wondering why I spent so long in the miracle before coming to find you? That's right, I was cultivating in seclusion. Qin Feiyong said. This is definitely not true. You've only been in seclusion for half a year. How could you break through to the war god realm? Zhuge Mingyang said angrily and hysterically. No matter what, he couldn't accept this sudden change. The secrets hidden in the miracle are something you can never imagine. What you've seen is only the tip of the iceberg. Qin Feiyong's body trembled, and his aura spread out in all directions. This is the aura of the war god. That's right. He has really stepped into the war god realm. The Grand Master murmured. Why? Since you've already broken through to the war god realm, why are you still pretending to be pitiful? Zhuge Mingyang roared. The truth. Everything I've done is for the truth. Now that the truth has been revealed, there's no need to continue hiding. Qin Feiyong said calmly. What about Zhao Tailai and the others? Zhuge Mingyang asked. Them? Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed and said with a smile, I didn't lie to you about this. They are indeed fighting against Mu Tianyang in the Forgotten Continent. Haha. Zhuge Mingyang immediately laughed. Without Zhao Tailai and the others, even if you break through to the war god realm, what can you do? Killing you is as easy as slaughtering a dog. Innate ability. Open for me. With a fierce laugh, the bone dragon war soul soared out from behind Zhuge Mingyang, releasing waves of demonic might. An invisible domain then enveloped Qin Feiyong. Boom. Qin Feiyong's cultivation immediately plummeted. False god. Peak realm 9-star war emperor. 9-star war emperor. 8-star war emperor. Looking at Qin Feiyong, who had fallen straight down to 8-star war emperor, Emperor Hong and the others, as well as Grandpa Hot and the others, couldn't help but become nervous. Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1789. In the past, when Zhuge Mingyang was a false god, the power of his divine powers would be greatly reduced when he faced a combat god. For example, when Zhuge Mingyang fought with Mu Chongfeng in the Land of Inheritance.
At that time, he could only reduce Mu Chongfeng's cultivation to the false god realm. But now, Zhuge Mingyang had also become a combat god. Therefore, even if his opponent was a combat god, he could still take away 4 small realms. The emperor was worried. But the imperial tutor was relieved. Even if Qin Feiyong broke through to the combat god realm, Zhuge Mingyang's divine powers would still be able to widen the gap. And the gap was even bigger than when Qin Feiyong hid his cultivation. When he hid his cultivation, he was at the false god realm. But now, he was only an 8-star combat emperor. How is it? You still dare to be arrogant? It's that easy to kill you. Zhuge Mingyang laughed cruelly. He took a step forward and slapped Qin Feiyong's chest with his palm. Poof! Qin Feiyong spat out a mouthful of blood. His chest caved in and his heart was torn apart. He fell to the ground again like a meteorite. Still pretending? Lu Zheng raised his eyebrows. Pretending? Second Grandpa looked at him suspiciously. My cousin broke through to the combat god realm. Both his combat soul and the 6-word divine art have undergone tremendous changes. Zhuge Mingyang's divine powers can't do anything to him. This bastard. There should be a limit to his pretentiousness. Lu Zheng snorted coldly. Second Grandpa and the other 2 looked at each other and looked at Qin Feiyong curiously. Their eyes were full of anticipation. What other tricks is this kid hiding? Boom! Qin Feiyong rushed out from the ground and into the sky again. Furthermore, he did not shrink back at all and directly entered the domain formed by Zhuge Mingyang's innate divine ability. Qin Feiyong, you're really not afraid of death. Zhuge Mingyang laughed angrily. If it were anyone else, they would definitely avoid his innate divine ability. But this guy actually took the initiative to enter. Wasn't he provoking him? Don't worry about whether I'm afraid of death or not. Show me all your tricks. I want to see how much you've changed and whether you deserve my full strength. Qin Feiyong said lightly. Haha, Zhuge Mingyang laughed maniacally and said, without Lu Jijin, who can break my innate mystical power? Don't tell me that you've also activated Eye of Nothingness? I didn't activate Eye. Qin Feiyong shook her head. Then why are you still be arrogant? Zhuge Mingyang roared. He took a step forward. Divine power surged from the tip of his index finger. It emitted a destructive aura as it went straight for Qin Feiyong's forehead. This kind of ordinary attack won't be able to kill me, Qin Feiyong said. Using the walk formula, he easily dodged the attack as if he was teleporting. Humph! Zhuge Mingyang snorted coldly. He immediately teleported and arrived behind Qin Feiyong in an instant. Boom! He retracted his index finger and clenched it into a fist as he punched towards Qin Feiyong's back. It seems that other than the increase in your cultivation, your strength hasn't changed much. If that's the case, then shut up. Qin Feiyong raised the corner of his mouth and the purple gold divine dragon fighting soul roared out. Are you going to activate the Emperor Prison? Zhuge Mingyang was surprised, but then his face was full of disdain as he sneered. Even the Emperor Prison can't break my divine powers. He didn't retract his fist and continued to punch towards Qin Feiyong's back. The Emperor Prison can't break your divine powers indeed. But what if it's the Eye of Heaven? Qin Feiyong laughed. Eye of Heaven? Zhuge Mingyang was surprised. Eye of Heaven, open! Qin Feiyong shouted explosively, and then a crack split open between the brows of the violet gold dragon soul, and then strands of dazzling violet gold divine light shot out from it. It looked like something was trying to come out from the purple gold dragon soul's glabella. It's here. Lu Zheng's eyes flickered as he couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. Bas! Accompanied by a dazzling divine light, a third eye appeared between the purple gold dragon soul's glabella. This is... Zhuge Mingyang paused and looked at the dragon soul's glabella in surprise. Emperor Hong and the others also looked at the purple gold dragon soul, their faces full of doubts. Because they had never seen the purple gold dragon soul's technique before. The third eye of the purple gold dragon soul was as big as a millstone. The pupil was divided into 2 halves. Half was purple, and the other half was gold. Watch carefully how I break through your innate ability. Qin Feiyong whispered. A mysterious aura suddenly emerged from the third eye and rushed towards the bone dragon soul. That's right. Shatter the battle soul, and the divine powers will naturally disintegrate.
Seeing this, fourth grandpa's eyes lit up as he laughed. The power of the Eye of Heaven is not as simple as you think. Lu Zheng said. Fourth grandpa was surprised.
It will give you a big scare. Lu Zheng murmured. As soon as Lu Zheng's voice fell, an amazing scene appeared. With a loud dragon roar, a giant dragon appeared out of thin air above Qin Feiyong's head. How is this possible? Zhuge Mingyang's eyes widened in anger. The giant dragon was thousands of feet long, like a huge mountain ridge, with monstrous demonic might. And this giant dragon was exactly the same as his bone dragon soul. Feiyong has a fourth battle soul?
Emperor Hong also looked at the emperor with a dumbfounded expression and asked.
No.
The emperor shook his head.
Then what the hell is going on? And what's even stranger is that his bone dragon soul is exactly the same as Zhuge Mingyang's battle soul. Emperor Hong said. You fought with him at the miracle. Even you don't know, how could I know? The emperor smiled bitterly. Zhuge Mingyang roared, Qin Feiyong, what kind of trick did you use?
Camouflage, Qin Feiyong muttered, suddenly looked at the bone dragon soul above, and shouted, Innate divine powers, activate!
Boom! Immediately. An invisible domain enveloped over. Immediately. An even more unbelievable scene appeared. Zhuge Mingyang's cultivation also began to plummet all the way to an 8-star war emperor. This is innate divine powers, destruction. Zhuge Mingyang's face was blank. Not only did he activate the same bone dragon soul, but he also activated the same innate divine powers? No. This wasn't real. How could there be such a ridiculous thing in this world? Emperor Hong and the others, second grandpa and the others all looked at each other in dismay. The methods that Qin Feiyong had displayed now were too unbelievable. This was not something that could be described with just the word strange.
Zheng, what the hell is going on?
Second grandpa, third grandpa, fourth grandpa, and the surrounding Lu family members all looked at Lu Zheng. Because here, only Lu Zheng could solve the doubts in their hearts. Lu Zheng took a deep breath and said with a smile, The Eye of Heaven is the innate divine power of the purple gold dragon soul. It can copy all attack methods. Copy all attack methods? Everyone was stunned, and once again looked at the bone dragon soul above Qin Feiyong. In other words, Qin Feiyong did not truly activate the bone dragon soul, and only copied Zhuge Mingyang's battle soul and innate divine powers? Wait, Qin Feiyong's innate divine power was not the Emperor Prison? How did it become the Eye of Heaven? Eye of Heaven. Copy all attack methods, at the same time. Hearing Lu Zheng's words, Zhuge Mingyang seemed to have thought of something, and even trembled violently. He stared at the third eye of the purple gold dragon soul in disbelief. After you broke through to the war god realm, your methods did not change much. However, my methods have undergone an earth-shattering change.
The Eye of Heaven is one of them.
Qin Feiyong turned around and looked at Zhuge Mingyang with a smile. What did you say?
The Eye of Heaven appeared after you broke through to the war god realm.
Zhuge Mingyang was shocked. Otherwise,
if I had activated the Eye of Heaven from the beginning, would I not have used it when facing you and Mu Tianyang?
Qin Feiyong said. Zhuge Mingyang said, in other words, your purple gold dragon soul now has 2 innate divine powers? That's right. Qin Feiyong nodded. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Zhuge Mingyang shook his head. Battle souls were also divided into different levels. Similar to the combat arts, ordinary people could only activate ordinary fighting souls. This type of battle soul did not have any innate divine powers. A battle soul that could activate innate divine powers was at least a superior or even a top battle soul. However, since ancient times, a battle soul could only activate 1 innate divine power. 2 innate divine powers were simply unheard of. Actually, I'm also very surprised. After all, in history, no one has ever activated 2 innate divine powers. But this is the truth. Maybe our cultivation is not enough, so we can't understand these things. Qin Feiyong said. 2 innate divine powers. And the Eye of Heaven. I'm not convinced. Zhuge Mingyang murmured and finally couldn't help but roar. Qin Feiyong said. From what you said, you seem to have some understanding of the Eye of Heaven? At first, I didn't think of it. But when I heard Lu Zheng's explanation, I suddenly remembered that Master once told me about this type of battle soul. Master said that there are some battle souls in the world that have surpassed the limit of battle souls. Unique in the world. The Eye of Heaven is one of them. Whether it's battle souls, battle arts, or divine arts, they can all be replicated. Lu Zhijin's Eye of Nothingness and Mu Qing's all-seeing eye are also among them. Zhuge Mingyang said in a deep voice. I see. Qin Feiyong nodded in realization and said with a smile, having a powerful master is indeed different. To be honest, sometimes I'm quite envious of you. Are you mocking me? Lu Zhijin activated the Eye of Nothingness, so I won't say anything. After all, his talent is recognized as the best in the great Qin Empire. But what ability do you and Mu Qing have to activate the Eye of Heaven and the all-seeing eye? I'm not convinced. How can trash like you be more outstanding than me? Zhuge Mingyang. The Eye of Heaven, right? I'll kill you all the same. Because I have an advantage that you don't have, and that is divine power. Zhuge Mingyang roared. Gray-white divine power poured out like a torrent, sweeping through the void for thousands of miles. The destructive aura annihilated everything. My divine power is invincible against the same cultivation. Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand, and his divine power roared in the sky and rushed toward Qin Feiyong aggressively. Genius memorized this address in a second. Mobile version of reading website. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.